Well, hello, everyone. We're live or we're replaying, depending on when you're watching this. Welcome, everybody. Finished the pre-show stuff. We got about 10 minutes before we go live. So if you are watching this on the replay, you can fast forward if you don't want to sit through all the pre-show stuff. Let's try changing the website and making sure that the top of the site looks right. And I should probably put the link /live. And let's change the website so that the status bar on the top looks a little bit different. Let's change it. What is that called? It's right here. Haven't done this for a couple of weeks. You get rusty not doing it. My free A+ study group is live right now. Click here to join us and /live. Can't type, can't talk. I think that's going to be a fantastic study group with those two things in place. All right, my free A+ study group is live right now. Click here to join us /live. Okay. Let's do a camera check. Since you're here, hi. Hello. It's me. That camera looks pretty good. Nothing in the way. Top of the, just barely missing the top of the screen. We've got the bird cam, I call it. We've got the camera that's in front of me, which is really this one. Hi, look, it's me. And then we've got... Let's bring up the presentation and see if that, yep, that works too. Okay. See, we're ready to go. Now what do we do for 7.5 minutes? Well, we'll talk to the chat room. If you are watching this live on YouTube and you are live on YouTube, watching it live, then you can visit the website to get the chat at professormesser.com/live. And if you're not watching this live, that won't help you very much because there's nothing live there. But you can still follow along. One of these days, I'll put the chat on the screen, figure out how to make all that happen. It's one of those things that's on my to-do list, on my somewhat healthy to-do list. I think we can put that there. Just got back from a week out of town, so the fact that all of this is working, it's still here, it still works, is all a good thing. So I think I know what to do with this. I think I know how this all should work. Let's put up this here. All right, got my little yellow marker on the screen. Let's see how the birds are doing. What's going on in the bird feeder? That's not a bird feeder, that's a squirrel. That's a random picture that comes up every time I do a new tab. And it happened to be a squirrel as I was planning to show the live stream of the bird feeder. Oh, we have some activity. There he goes. Blue jay. It's just there. Need to put a little more food in there. There is some over here. You can't see it. I need to move this camera so you can see the bird stuff behind. Actually, it's sort of set. He's back. It's sort of set up so that there's a walkway back here. And I put the camera so that you can't see the walkway. Adds a little bit of privacy for the yard. Even though there's a mic on this, there's only so much privacy, I guess. Can't hear much of what goes on. Because right behind this is water. Hear the stream. And yes, this is the pre-show. This is part of the video stream. What in the world is going on? Why are we watching this? We've got 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 seconds until we get started with the live stream. I just got my calendar notice that indeed I have a live stream. It occurs to me that getting a calendar notice 5 minutes before it's supposed to go live is probably not going to be very productive because it takes a little more than 5 minutes to get all of this set up, as you might imagine. So it really takes what does it take to get this set up? Once everything is written, it takes half a day to write it. So it takes 4 hours to sit down, come up with the questions. I write all the questions brand new every time, or I have been. Maybe I should rethink that. But we have brand new questions every time. So I write all the questions out, post them in Socrative, do all of that. There is other things that have to be set up. The live stream has to be set up on the back end with YouTube. I have to set up the web pages so it will post the proper things at the proper times. That type of thing. This feed is from, this bird feed is from the bird feed store. It's from the, what's the store? I'll have to find it. Now you've drawing a blank. Bird, like I knew 2 words. Wild Birds Unlimited is where this is from. They are a chain. There is a local one here in Tallahassee. And the Wild Birds Unlimited feed. Oh, this is, I think, the No Mess blend. I think that's what this one is. But that's what that feed is. So there you go. Yeah, mostly sunflowers in this because it is the end of the summer. Most of the birds that are coming by are looking for sunflower seeds. As we get into the winter, there will be more millet added to this. So you'll see the smaller little millet inside of this, but we generally don't do that in the summer. Usually it's for the winter birds. Beep codes are, everything on the 901 exam is spelled out for you in the exam objectives. So you can look at the exam objectives and see exactly what is going to be expected of you. I'll mention that 12, 13, 14 other times on this live stream. And beep codes are in the objectives, but knowing what a beep code refers to obviously is not, because beep codes are different between different motherboards and between different manufacturers. So there's no possible way to memorize. If it goes beep, 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 what's that mean? Well, I don't know. There's no way to memorize that. But you have to know what that means. If you turn on your computer and the screen's blank and it goes beep, 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 what just happened? What was that? Why did it do that? What things could it possibly be? What things could it not possibly be? So that's what you need to know. Would I say CertMaster is a good study tool? I would say that most people have said that it is not. I have not used it. So I'll talk about exams and what comes next and what the timing is, but the short is keep studying for the 901, 902. There's nothing has been announced. No new test is coming anytime soon. We got 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I should probably, what have I got here? I'm down to the last of my Singer Saving Grace. I'm going to need more of this. Just enough to kind of keep the voice going there. I also have some Entertainer's Secret. I need to get refills on those things. I know these exams, they put things, you will find information on exams everywhere that has nothing to do with the exam objectives. If you stick to the exam objectives, you're going to be fine. There's not going to be a problem. If you do not stick to the exam objectives and you listen to these exams, you could be studying things that way. Why are we doing the study group a week late? Well, we're not doing it a week late. We're doing it exactly when I said we would do it, which happens to be the second Wednesday of the month, which is a little different than most. Because I went on a vacation. I took a week off. Sort of a working vacation. So I flew to California and flew back. So that was what that was about. Yeah, we got a bunch of Wednesdays in August. So we have 5 to work through. So I skipped the first one this month, and then we're doing A+ this week, Network Plus the week after, Security Plus the week after that. Then I got a week break, and then we're back to it in September. Okay, it's about time to get this all set up. Let's change this around. Let's get this ready. Let's get rid of the bird feeder. Bye-bye, bird feeder. That's the birdfeeder.live. That is the bird feeder in my backyard. For those of you wondering, that is my backyard. No sun today. What's up with that? She must be gone. How are we doing on time? It's time to get started. Let's do this. Here we go. How's this work again? Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2017 Professor Messer A+ Study Group, brought to you from the world headquarters of Messer Studios here in Tallahassee, Florida. I am James Messer. I will be your host through this next hour of Q&A. After that first hour, we will do an hour of just open phone lines where we can talk about anything. I'm also watching what's going on the live stream. If you're watching this live, there's a chat that goes along with the live stream, so I will be talking to the chat room, which we did in the pre-show a little bit. You can find all of that at professormesser.com/live. If you're watching this on the replay, obviously the chat's not going to be there. A lot of the live interactive Q&A that we're going to do today will not be interactive, but you'll at least be able to follow along with what we are doing here. So there's a lot that's been going on. A lot of people in the chat room said, what's been going on? Well, you'll notice this is the second week of the month. Normally, we have our A+ study group on the first week of the month, but took me and Mrs. Professor Messer went to California for a week. It's a little bit of business, a little bit of pleasure. So it was kind of nice to get away and see a few sites. But now we're back. So we have some A+ to do today. We've got plenty of things to go through today. I've got a whole list of things. Don't forget, by the way, to the phone number's there, but the phone number's also there at professormesser.com/live. You'll see the phone number there to call in during the second hour. The phone lines aren't up right now, so you will not see anything there associated with that. One thing that I will remind you, though, is you can always follow us on the social media platforms. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/Twitter. One thing I will tell you, if I can find my professormesser.com/YouTube, I'm going to go to that channel right now and see how things are looking. Some of you may notice, in fact, that we are at 199,994 subscribers. So when I say please subscribe, if 6 of you were to subscribe, then we'd be at the 200,000 subscriber mark. Can you believe that? I cannot. 95. Boy, it's going slow. You guys are just sprinkling it in there. Every second, yeah, you might get one. You might not get one. It's an amazing accomplishment that we would not be able to do without your help. And it does help to subscribe. I got an email from the folks at YouTube just yesterday saying, gosh, you got a lot of people subscribing. Here's someone you can always talk to. Here's we're going to have a conversation with you. Let's see how to optimize things and make sure that people are able to see your videos. So it helps keep the free videos going to have that there. So I want to thank everybody for subscribing and keeping that there. We'll check back in and see if we get over that 200,000 mark. Thank you so much for subscribing. It does really go a long way. Also, don't forget about the voucher discounts. professormesser.com/vouchers will be able to get you a voucher discount of 10%. If you are a student, you get a voucher discount of about 50%. There's a nice discount if you have an EDU email address. So if you have an EDU email address, just Google the CompTIA academic store. That's what you want, the academic store. So that's one of the things that can help you financially. But if you're not a student, don't pay full price. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers and you will be able to get a voucher discount on this. If you're watching this, you can also earn continuing education credits, 1 hour's worth of a webinar CEU for watching this. You already have to have a certification to earn the CEU. If you don't have your certification yet, this won't help you. But sometime in this first hour, I will give you instructions and tell you exactly how to do this. You have to follow those instructions to be able to earn those CEUs. So that's a way I can really make sure that you are really watching this, and I'll give you some special instructions later on. Quick update, just hit 200,000 subscribers. Can you believe it? I can't. This is one of those experiments that escaped the lab, and here we are, another milestone of 200,000 subscribers. I want to thank everybody so much for your ongoing support and attending these live streams and sending me the notes. Really fantastic. It is, I can't wait to tell Mrs. Professor Messer about what we did today. Thank you so much. What a good feeling, right? This is something that I would not be able to do, would not be able to accomplish without your help. So thanks so much. What a fun time we've had doing this. In the pre-show, a few folks asked about the current version of the A+ exam. Is this the version I should be working on? Is there a new version of the exam coming? Well, here's the update. The latest version of the A+ exam is the 229.01 and the 229.02. Those are the two tests that you would be taking around the world. If you're signing up for your A+ exams, you're signing up for the 229.01 exam or the 229.02 exam. It was released, as you can see here, on December the 15th of 2015. Usually they refresh these about every 3 years. So you should start to see an update to this somewhere around December 15th of 2018. So you have lots of time on this particular exam version. Now, of course, whether you're doing exams on the 229.01, 902, or any other exam when it happens to get here someday in the distant future, you're earning the A+ certification. So it doesn't matter which exams you take, you need to get the A+ exam. So right now, concentrate on the 900 series. All the things that we're going to talk about today will be about the 900 series exam. You can see a summary of those exam objectives. Let's see if I can show it to you without my head in the way. Nope, that's not it. It's this one here. So here they are. You've got the 229.01 and 902. Make sure you get the exam objectives. Comes in handy. We are going to be doing some Q&A today for the folks that are asking about that. I've got Q&A also on my site, and I've got Q&A books. A lot of people want the Q&A books that I put together. The Pop Quiz Collection PDFs are available. 1,300 questions across the 901 and 902. There's two separate books, one for the 901, one for the 902. These are digital PDF books. You can download them immediately. Find out more about those at professormesser.com/PQC, Pop Quiz Collection. There's also free tests online. These are completely different questions. I've taken archives of these study groups, and they're available at professormesser.com/popquiz. So that might be also a good way to go through, and hundreds of A+, 901 and 902 questions are there. A lot of you wanted audio versions of this study group. You can, of course, watch the video replay on my website. The audio versions are also available at professormesser.com/podcasts. Let's get into the questions for today. So as many of you that have done this before, there are questions that we do interactively. They're live using a technology called Socrative. You can go to an app store on your mobile device and download the Socrative student app and go to Room Professor Messer. But I also have a quick link for everybody who's doing this in a browser. You can simply go to professormesser.com/QA. That QA link will take you to the screen that allows you to answer questions. And I have a question for you to get started. This is not an A+ question. It's a question to see if your Socrative is really working right. So if you go to professormesser.com/QA, you should see a question that says, in the United States, how many printed books were sold in 2016? So you will also have a number of options available to you. One of those options is 6 million, another is 67 million, another one is 674 million, and another is 6.7 billion. So this is one that if you can see the question and you can answer the question, then you can stay right there on that page. As I flip through the questions, your page will automatically update. So you don't have to change anything. You don't have to refresh. You just sit there and the questions will appear. If you don't see this question, then you're not in the right room. You want, if you're using the app, make sure you go to the room Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. So as you go through, you can see the people that are logging in right now, 106, 107. Thank you so much for getting in there. That way you're able to answer. We can see that kind of most people saying 67 million. 37% of you have said 67 million. 30% of you said 674 million. But what is it? The answer, according to Nielsen BookScan, 674 million printed books were sold in 2016. So I mentioned this because today, August the 9th, is Book Lovers Day. So if you are thinking about getting a book, reading a book, if you're working on your A+ certification, you probably are reading a book. And if you don't have an A+ book, you need to get an A+ book. So on Book Lovers Day, what a better day to go out and get an A+ book. Just something to think about. Let's do some A+ questions. I've got a first question for you that deals with Q&A on the exam. Oh, by the way, the 674 million. So if you answered C, 674 million, 35% of you got that one absolutely right. If you have taken any of CompTIA's exams, either the A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, one thing you'll notice is the first few questions on the exams are not the traditional multiple choice. They are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. These might be questions that are at a command line and you're expected to type things into the command line. They might be matching questions where you have to match a picture with a description. They could be putting things in order from highest to lowest or top to bottom, but it's anything but a typical multiple choice question. So you should be ready for those. There's a section of those at the beginning. So normally I'll tell people to skip over those, go through all the multiple choice, and then come back to them. Depends on how you like to do your tests. There's a lot of different strategies associated with that and getting those things. But I have a performance-based question for you. So we're going to start off with a hard performance-based question. Everything else is multiple choice today, but this one's performance-based. And here's the performance-based question. I want you to put these malware removal best practices in order. So the first thing you would do to the last thing you would do. Now, if you think this is the right order, you notice it's a fill-in-the-blank option for you in Socrative. You can simply type in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you're done. So you don't have to type these all the way out. I put the letters there so you can reference. If you think they are in the reverse order, you would put G, F, E, D, C, B, A. But as we probably know at this point, these are not in order. I've scrambled them up, and you need to be able to really go through and work through all of these different pieces. So if you think you know, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, these are already in order, then you've already got a problem. There's already an issue because these are definitely not in order. There are a number of things you have to do first, second, third, and I put every single one of the malware tasks that CompTIA gives you to be able to do this. So definitely think about what the proper answer is. And this is a tough one. So make sure you put them in the order, and we'll want to put all of them, A through G, in that list. Maybe you think you know what they are, and being able to do that and have them there. The answers are coming in. Some of you are putting in what those are. You'll notice in the A+ exam, there are a number of opportunities for performance-based questions like this. There might be matching. In the 901 exam, there's a lot of interfaces, there's a lot of cables. They might present you with a bunch of pictures and ask you to match them to what they are. We've done a number of those on a number of the study groups. We've also seen putting things in order from the fastest throughput to the slowest throughput, or the slowest to the fastest. You have to make sure that you read the questions very, very carefully so you know what order CompTIA is asking for on these exams. So that's another one where you need to be able to work through those, have them there. Whenever I start looking at questions like this, you'll notice that this takes a little bit of time. It's very time consuming. And when it's the first questions that's asked of you on the exam, it's almost a little overwhelming. That's why I recommend that people skip over these questions. The A+ exam is one that allows you to skip to any question at any time. It's not one that changes or forces you into a certain set of questions as you go through it. So you're very easily, you can go the last question and work your way backwards through the exam if you want to. But one of the things I recommend is you skip all of the performance-based questions. There might be 1, there might be 10. We never know how many we're going to get. And then go to the multiple choice, because then that will first let you settle in as you're taking the exam. And secondly, the things you go through in the multiple choice might help you with the performance-based questions. So let's see how we did with the malware removal. What order is it? Hopefully you've written down. I see a lot of people are putting down. I think most people did really good with these. Maybe you got 1 or 2 flipped, which is really good. So let's see how we did. Yeah, we should have written down what those answers are, because you'll notice when you put them into Socrative, they disappear. But maybe we'll prompt it. Here is the actual order for these. It is EBA, FCGD. So we want to first identify that the malware is even there. So you want to be able first to know, are we even is there even malware? Why would we even go through this process if there was no malware? So the first thing we have to do is identify that malware is actually there. Secondly, if it's got malware, we need to quarantine this from the network. We don't know what this malware does. We don't know how it replicates. We need to make sure that everything plugged into it stays right there, that we don't plug additional things into the system. We need to separate it We need to put it in its own little corral away from all of the other horses. Secondly, or thirdly, A, is we need to disable system restore. Anything that we do here does not need to have anything to do with system restore. As you know, if you install a new application, if changes are made in your system, an update is made to system restore that allows you to go back in time effectively into a previous configuration of your Windows system. The problem is a lot of malware, most malware, will not only infect your live system, it will infect all of your system restores. So they're worthless at this point. We can't go back in time and expect to remove ourselves from the malware. So we need to disable system restore and delete that completely. We'll have to begin again later on. Then we need to remediate. And in the words of CompTIA, this means to clean up the malware. In my world, that means to completely delete everything on the computer and install a new operating system or install from a known good backup. There's no other way to really be sure that you're going to be able to remove malware by just simply running a cleaner. Malware these days is too good for that. And you probably should have a backup, right? You need to absolutely know that you have something you can restore from, especially when you consider some of the ransomware that's out there these days. It's required that you have a backup. The next option we want to do is, now that we've remediated the system, we've cleaned the malware and we're back to a clean system, let's set up some scans and make sure those are updated constantly, maybe every hour, maybe every day, so we constantly have an updated set of signatures to guard against any future infections. Then we can enable system restore again, because obviously we deleted it originally. Now we can turn it back on. And finally, educate the end user. Probably the most difficult part of this entire process is that last one, where we try to tell the user, this is what you should be doing. Now, can you mix those things up a bit? I think you probably could with some of them, but this is the list that's in the CompTIA exam objectives, which you can get from professormesser.com/objectives. We'll take you to the CompTIA website. You could also go to the Google machine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. It will get you there as well. So if you answered EBA, F, C, G, D, you got this one absolutely correct. In the chat room, question came in about the performance-based questions. Do you get partial credit? What if you mixed up one of these? Well, CompTIA has actually responded to this. They actually have made two different responses to this. Their original response was one on their website that said it is remarkably rare for them to provide any type of partial credit on the exam. And that they were very, very explicit in saying that no, you really don't get partial credit. Made me believe there might be one or maybe two questions where they might give some type of partial credit. They've updated the FAQ on their site, their frequently asked questions, because they have said that indeed there is partial credit that can be given, but they really didn't talk about the rarity of it. They just said, yeah, we might. I think they probably made it generic so they wouldn't have to keep going back and updating the answer. So in this particular case, CompTIA uncharacteristically has responded and told us that, well, indeed, we might give you performance-based question or other types of questions partial credit. Given the previous questions that were given, even the previous responses that CompTIA gave, makes me believe it doesn't happen very often. So you should not count on that either. And at the end of the day, you have no idea how they grade it anyway, because they don't show you any of the results at the end. So what can we possibly do with that? And also in the chat room, for those of you wondering if I even read this, yes, I do read this because I just answered a question from the chat room. We have no idea how many points each performance-based question is worth. CompTIA doesn't provide any type of information about how they score anything on the exam. All you have to do is hope you get as many right as you can and hope for the best. And if you do get as many right as you can, you know the exam objectives, you know everything on the exam objectives, and you go through it, you're going to pass your exam. It's really that simple. So know your exam objectives and you're going to be fine. If you don't know what the exam objectives are, you're already behind. You need to go download those objectives. Those should be your master checklist. Let's do another question, shall we? We've got one here. Here's the question. Which of the following would be commonly configured to retrieve mail when using a mobile device? You'll see this change in your Socrative front end. You just have to sit there because I have some options available for you. Which of the following would be commonly configured to retrieve mail when using a mobile device? Would it be, where's my head? There it is. Would it be A is SMTP, B is HTTPS, C is IMAP, D is SNMP, and E is SMail? One of these would be commonly configured to retrieve mail. Now, if you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to answer on Socrative. You can go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer this question online. So now if you're someone also who is on professormesser.com/QA, you're answering this. If you're watching this in the replay, you're not able to answer these in Socrative. You'll go to professormesser.com/QA and it says you're waiting for the instructor. Well, that's because it's on a replay. So you'll have to follow along with us and be able to step through all of these. This is one that is an important one. Knowing how to manage mobile devices becomes pretty important, especially if you start getting into some of the more advanced capabilities of these mobile devices. And I think you'll see more and more mobile technologies added to these certifications as we go on. One of the things I like about these exams is they do have some of the most recent types of technologies, and especially with the mobile pieces. You'll notice a lot of this in the other CompTIA exams are constantly updated with those types of things. So maybe you know what some of those things are as well. This is, I think, whenever we go through and try to figure these answers out, you do have to be very particular. The exam tries to give you sometimes answers that seem like they could be correct but are not. Or in the case of this question, I was really asking what would be commonly configured. There might be one of these answers that is not as common to configure. So you have to pick those out. There may be answers that could technically be correct, but only one is the one that's most commonly configured. And that's the important one to choose. In fact, in this answer, there are at least two of these that could be considered a way to retrieve mail when using mobile devices. But I didn't ask you how many of these could be used. I asked you for the most common one, which means you have to know which one of these is the most common way to do it. So let's see how we did. I'm going to click the How Do We Do button. We can see that really a tie between two of them, or really a choice between two. Number one on our list is, for 55% of you, said IMAP. Answer C. 35% of you said A, SMTP. And really single digits for everything else. Single digits for HTTPS, single digits 3% for SNMP, and 5% for SMail. So one of these is probably correct. A or C is probably the correct answer if we go with what everybody's saying about the proper answers. So let's look at what the question is. We want to know about retrieving mail. So one of the two most common ways to retrieve mail on a mobile device are using protocols such as the post office protocol, POP3, which is rarely used these days, but still available on many email systems. And another one is IMAP. IMAP's probably the more common way to retrieve mail on a mobile device. And that's one of those things. One thing you'll also see to configure your system for these mobile devices, you may see an option for SMTP. This is used for sending mail. And the question I asked was specifically about retrieving mail. SMTP is almost always used for sending mail. This simple mail transfer protocol is one that is commonly used, but it's commonly used for outgoing mail or mail between mail servers. So you can send it out to the mail server, it pops around, eventually ends up in somebody's mailbox, and they are probably going to retrieve that using IMAP. There's other ways to retrieve mail. Now, one of the options I did not provide you, but one option you should know about because it is on the exam objectives, is the corporate email systems. And most commonly, that would be Microsoft Exchange or Office 365, one of the more common ways that people are doing that these days. There's also a number of commercial providers, which is where the HTTPS comes in, because a lot of people use their browser to retrieve mail using Google Mail or Yahoo Mail or Hotmail or Outlook.com or iCloud, many different ways to do that. But that was not one of the most common ways when you're configuring retrieving of mail on a mobile device. If you are retrieving mail on a mobile device, that most common way is indeed IMAP at 55%. And as we mentioned, SMTP, although certainly on the configuration, it's in your mobile device, you would be configuring it. It's for sending mail, but our question talked specifically about retrieving mail. HTTPS, as I mentioned, is something used in a browser, so not exactly the answer we were looking for here. SNMP, the simple network management protocols used by management systems to be able to check the availability and health of other devices. So it's not used for mail at all. It's used for network administration, system administration. And SMAIL, I tried to come up with something new. That doesn't exist. SMAIL is not a thing. Just a word I stuck together. I put mail and I put an S in front of it because it's secure mail. So there's my new secure. I made it up. That's why only 5% of you chose it, because it doesn't really exist in the world. If you answered C, IMAP, you got this one absolutely right. Well done with those. Let's do another question. By the way, you'll notice whenever I go through these, if you're wondering where'd this question come from, at the bottom of the slide, I do show you this comes from a 22902 exam, the exam objective number 2.6, and the video specific to this is configuring email on mobile devices. So if you wanted to go back and look at that video and see more about it, I go through this process again there as well. This is one where I think whenever we start looking at these questions, there's a lot to go through. So let's do another one. Here's one talking about laptops. The question is, which of the following would be the most likely reason for adding a docking station to your laptop? Again, it's a most likely question. That's one of those that they always get you. Why are you asking me about most likely? Let's find out more about this, because I have some options for you, and the options are, which of the following would be the most likely reason for adding a docking station? Would it be A, enable GPS functionality? Would it be B, add a PCI Express expansion card? Would it be C, add Bluetooth network connectivity? Would it be D, add touchpad input? Or would it be E, restrict login access to the operating system? And this is one that would be a good one to know about, and certainly it's in the exam objectives, so you do need to know about it on the exam. Pretty important to be able to do that. This is one where if you happen to know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA, and maybe some of you have added docking stations to your laptops. We're getting more away from docking stations these days, but there are still people that can really use them. And there's some very specific examples of why you would want to use a docking station. Hopefully one of those answers, I'm going to take a sneak peek. One of those answers I think does fit with a lot of people's idea of how docking stations work. And in the past, I have had workstations where I've had docking stations. So I've taken advantage of this technology before as well. And it does indeed come in handy. And in fact, I used that docking station for one of those answers. Now, could you, again, have multiple answers that could technically be viable? They might be correct. Yes, there are at least 4 of these 5 answers could possibly be an answer. Really, all 5 could possibly be, but 4 could technically be an answer. But again, make sure you check the question which says the most likely reason. So you have to have some familiarity with this technology and being able to use it. That's where whenever I start looking through, what do I do? How does this work? What are these questions looking for? You need to have some familiarity with these. You need to understand what these docking stations do. So let's see how we did with this one. You can see that 64% of us said B, add a PCI Express expansion card. 15% said add touchpad input. 11% said restrict login access to the operating system. Single digits, though, for adding Bluetooth network connectivity, and only 1% said to enable GPS functionality. So which one of these would it be? Would it be the one that got the majority, the 63% that said, yeah, we'll add a PCI Express? Is that really the correct answer? I imagine it's probably a pretty good chance. Let's talk about docking stations. This is where we want to add some additional functionality. It's literally a dock that we have expansion. Usually it's on the bottom or the back of our workstation, where we can simply put the laptop into the docking station, and it usually allows us to add some additional capabilities. First, it allows us to plug in our laptop and automatically have a lot of connected devices, so you don't, every time you put the laptop in at work, you don't have to plug in a mouse, you don't have to plug in a keyboard. You just put the docking station on there and it works great. That's one that does come in handy. In fact, this is one where if you're trying to quickly connect to the network and disconnect from the network, that's an easy way to do it. But you'll notice has a lot of room back here because some docking stations have an entire PCI Express or an expansion bus there. And that's a great way to add additional capabilities because you can add full-size cards even though you're using a laptop. Obviously, you can only use the full-size cards when you're connected to the docking station, but all you have to do is slide your workstation in and you're good to go. That's a very simple way to start using these and have them available. So if we look at the list of all of the different things, enabling GPS functionality, we could put GPS functionality in the docking station, not a very common reason for adding a docking station. Bluetooth network connectivity, usually built into the laptop. We could use it, a docking station, to be able to add Bluetooth connectivity, not commonly done, however. Adding touchpad input, again, something already on the laptop. Could you add additional input options by adding a docking station? You could, but again, that's not one of the most likely reasons. And restricting login access to the operating system has nothing to do with the docking station. Indeed, the 63% of you that said add a PCI Express expansion card, we'd put that expansion card right here in the back, and you'd probably have connections on the side where you would plug in or have interfaces into that expansion card. That is the correct answer. If you answered B, the 63% of you got that one absolutely right. In the chat room, I do not use a docking station any longer. I don't have any reason to. There's no PCI Express expansion. Most of the expansion these days, in fact, with most laptops, is being done through Thunderbolt connections or other high-speed USB connections. And indeed, on my laptop, you can't see it here, but I do have some USB-C Thunderbolt connections on the side. One of them is providing power, and the other one is providing the video screen that you can see. That video there is what's on this screen right in front of me, and it's adding a video feed through there. So very high bandwidth to be able to have that there, so I don't have a need for a docking station on this. So it's one of those, it really depends. I think it's getting more and more unusual to find a situation where you would need a docking station because of that. It's just so many other options that are available to make that happen. Let's do another question. Well, before we do, you'll notice that there is a ton of information on the exam. We've already gone through docking stations. We've talked about mobile devices, but there's so much more. The 901 exam in itself, it has an amazing amount of content. The 902 exam, just as much. And how do you put all of this together and keep it straight? One of the things I recommend for most of you is to go through the videos and take your own notes. Make sure you have a good book. Do some Q&A. Make sure you do some hands-on so that you can really become familiar with these things. But I have a lot of videos. There's a lot of videos here. So if you're someone who does not want to go through the process of going through every single video and taking notes, I've already done it for you. I've taken all of the information that is in my all of my videos, and I've put them into these course notes. The course notes themselves they're pretty big. I've got a screen of them right here as I go through them. The 901 course notes start here. And you can see very visual. I take all of the graphics, all of the text. I try to take everything from every video that was important and I put into these course notes. This is also another great way to help support the website. Right now, the course notes are $10 for the 901 and $10 for the 902. I will tell you, unfortunately, the price will be going up probably this weekend. You will notice that my Network Plus course notes and my Security Plus course notes I've kept these prices low literally for years. They've been $10. But now that the site has grown, there's so much more that we have to support here. So they're going up just a little bit. Not much. You might not even notice, but they are going up a little bit. So if you've ever trying to think about, do I want this or do I not? This might be a good way to do it. There's also an option for a physical book, a literal book. The one I was showing you on my screen was the digital PDF, but you can actually purchase these course notes. It's exactly the same thing with exactly the full color, beautiful graphics, everything that you get in the PDF, just in something that you can take with you. And there it is, a physical book, one that is perfect bound, so it will stick together. It's not something that that is going to fall apart on you. It's a nice quality book. I really like what we did with this. So you might want to look at that too. For a little bit extra, you can get both the physical book, and when you buy the physical book, you get the PDF to download immediately as well. So you can find out all about those at professormesser.com/A+CN, APLUSCN for course notes. So it's a good way to do it. Some of you have also talked about the exam objectives. This follows the exam objectives directly. All of the parts of this follow it piece by piece. So make sure you go through and have a look at that as well. You can get the exam objectives on the CompTIA website. Another one, or go to professormesser.com/objectives. Thank you for your ongoing support with this. Again, get in now before the price goes up this weekend. I want you to have the best opportunity to get the best price on these. And thank you for your ongoing support. This is what keeps the site going. All the videos are free. You can watch every single one of my videos, every minute of every video I have for absolutely free. It's the course notes and the other things we sell on the site that helps keeps the lights on, helps us able to do more of these live events. So thank you so much for your ongoing support. We would not be able to do it without you. Let's get through another question. I promised you another one, so let's do another one. This one's an interesting question talking about a zero-day attack. The question is, which of the following would best describe a zero-day attack? Which one would best describe the zero-day attack? Would it be, I have some options for you, that a patch is not usually available? Would it be B, that a third party redirects traffic in the middle of a conversation? Would it be C, that a cryptographic vulnerability exists in an encryption mechanism? Would it be D, that a large group of devices work together to disable a service? Or would it be E, that a device uses the same IP address as another device? Which of those best describes a zero-day attack? This is another one where on a zero-day attack, there might be multiples of these things working against you. It is an attack after all, but only one of these best describes a zero-day attack. In fact, all of these are attacks. All of these are real. All of these are things that can happen, but only one of them best describes a zero-day attack. This is one where you will run into this from time to time on the exam. In fact, most of the time on the exam, they aren't going to ask you what an abbreviation means. That's way too easy. They want to ask you how an abbreviation is used. Or they want to know, based on a list of things, which one is the most common? Which one is the one that you would most often use? In fact, this is one of those questions, which the following would best describe one. So that's one you should think about. This is one where, when you go through it, make sure that you answer at professormesser.com/QA. Do not answer in the chat room. And you want to go through and answer this. If you're on a mobile device, again, the Socrative room is Professor Messer, all one word, just as it's written there, PROFESSORMESSER. Let me take a sip of coffee, and we will see how we did. Let me hit the button. We can see 44% of us, not quite half, 45% said a patch is not usually available, but we kind of have a tie for second in that a cryptographic vulnerability exists in an encryption mechanism, and a large group of devices work together to disable a service. Only 10% said a third party redirects traffic in the middle of a conversation, and only 3%, hardly anybody, said that a device uses the same IP address as another device. So that is one to be able to do that. So what is that? Which one is it really? Let's talk about zero-day attacks really quick, and then I'll answer a few questions from the chat room. Zero-day attacks are attacks that are suddenly happening. We had no idea that a vulnerability existed in an operating system. It was just sitting there. This is something that is already there. In fact, on every single one of our systems, there are vulnerabilities in the operating system, vulnerabilities in our browsers, vulnerabilities in all of this software we're using that nobody's found yet. Oh, but it's there. Trust me. There are vulnerabilities there that nobody's found yet, or at least nobody has told anybody that they found yet, if you really want to get deep and dark with these things. We just haven't identified them yet. But eventually somebody is going to find that vulnerability, and they're immediately going to start taking advantage of it. We'll start seeing malware in the wild taking advantage. That people will be able to get into your system without having any type of login credentials. They'll find a way to send a packet to your system to have it turn off. There's all kinds of crazy things that can happen. The problem is that we have no way to protect against that. We had no idea the vulnerability exists. Suddenly, somebody's taking advantage of it. So that becomes a little bit more of a challenge. So we want to be sure that we can stop these as quickly as possible. But one of the things that you'll run into is that a lot of the bad guys hold these vulnerabilities back. They keep a collection of them to be able to do that. And that's when we get a 0 day. 0 day is when the vulnerability suddenly appears, but nobody knew it was there. So suddenly we're now working hard the manufacturer finds out that someone was attacked. They find out how they were attacked. They find out about the vulnerability. They start creating this. Hopefully the vulnerability was identified by a white hat researcher, by somebody who's on the good side. And they're not going to tell anybody else about it, but maybe they find a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows. They go to Microsoft and they say, hey, I found this thing that gets people in. You might want to fix that. And they're like, okay, just hush up about that right now, and we're going to fix it. And then when we release the patch for it, we'll tell everybody that you found it. They might even give a little bit of money to the person that found that as a finder's fee. But what if the bad guys find it first? They're not going to go to Microsoft. They're not going to tell Microsoft they have a bug. They're going to take advantage of that vulnerability. And only after it's identified, suddenly we have a 0 day vulnerability. There's no patches available for it, and we're in trouble. You can find a lot of these vulnerabilities. They're just added every day. We've got these added there's probably a CVE, a common vulnerability and exposure number that is put into it. So you can find those CVEs at cve.mitre.org, mitre.org, to be able to know what those are. So if we look at a list of those that are here, 45% of us said a patch is not usually available. Indeed, you're absolutely correct. On a 0 day, that really does describe a 0 day attack, is that suddenly someone's attacking us and we have no way to prevent it. We had no idea the vulnerability was there, so therefore a patch is not commonly available when that happens. Quite a problem. The third-party redirects traffic in the middle of a conversation. Usually it's a man-in-the-middle attack, not necessarily a 0 day attack. Although there could be a vulnerability that allowed somebody to sit in the middle, that is not the one that best describes a 0 day attack. That best describes a man-in-the-middle attack. A C best describes really a cryptographic vulnerability, not really an attack at all, but we certainly saw that with things in the wireless world such as WEP. We no longer use WEP encryption because a cryptographic vulnerability exists in that cryptography. A large group of devices working together to disable a service would be a distributed denial of service attack, and a device using the same IP address as another device, that could be spoofing, or indeed it could be man-in-the-middle again. The only answer here that really does best describe a 0 day, and it should jump right out at you. It should be very obvious. These are not trick questions. And if you think this is a trick question, then you're probably not quite sure about what all of these different attacks are and what they mean. That means you need to go deeper into these topics. On this one, I got them from the 22902 videos, section 3.1, common security threats. So if you did answer A, a patch is not usually available, the 46% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do a troubleshooting question. These are important questions on the exam, so I wanted to be sure I added a troubleshooting question into this particular one. In the chat room, some people did ask a few things in the chat room about these. There are, for 0 day attacks, let me make sure. Oh, somebody was asking about military discounts. I do offer a military discount. If you click the Contact Us link at the top of my website and send me a note, I'll explain to you the process for confirming your military service, and I'll be able to offer that discount for you. I'll gladly offer that discount for you. Let's do a troubleshooting question. When you start your computer, this is a long one, isn't it? We're going to read through this one. When you start your computer, the system lights turn on and you hear a drive spinning and beeping sounds. Nothing ever appears on the screen. Which of the following would be the best way to troubleshoot this problem? So now this is one where there are many ways you could troubleshoot this problem. But we're going to talk about the most common. And for those of you in the chat room talking about military, it's both active duty, retired, veteran. If you've had anything related to the military, just send me an email. We'll take care of you. So which one of these would be the best way to troubleshoot this problem? A would be to check voltages with a multimeter. B would be to configure the boot sequence in the BIOS. C would be to connect a loopback plug and run diagnostics. D would be to install a postcard on the motherboard. And E would be try to boot from a recovery USB. which of these would be the best way to troubleshoot this problem? And it's really the first thing you should do is what we're really asking here. Maybe you might do all of these ultimately when troubleshooting this problem. I want to know what you do first whenever you step through these things. So which one of these would really be the best way to do it? I know my head's in the way of the questions. Let's go back to the questions so you can see it. If you think you know, do not answer in the chat room. Go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to do that. And while you do that, I'm going to turn down the temperature in here. It's getting a little warm under these lights. These are LED lights that I use, but they still get a little bit of heat. Not much. Not like it was with, literally the first videos I ever did, I used garage lights, like 1,000-watt halogen lights. I don't do that any longer. You can't even see them in this picture, but there's lights right in front of me. There's lights behind me that light the back, and they're all LED now. So relatively speaking, they are cool. I can touch them with my hands. Didn't work that way originally. I'm going to take a sneak peek at how you're answering this one, and then we're going to have a look at what some of these answers are. So maybe you've been in this scenario. In fact, we talked about a scenario like this in the pre-show where you turn on your computer, there's drives spinning, there's lights, there's beeping sounds, and then nothing. There's nothing on the screen. What in the world's going on? So how would we troubleshoot this? Let's see what you answered. You wouldn't see it there. You see my head there. There's where you would see the answer. So let's click how do we do? Well, we've got 44% of us. I like to have at least half of us agree on something, but we didn't on this one. 44% of us said install a postcard on the motherboard. Not a majority, but that is the largest number of people that answered D, install a postcard on the motherboard. 23% said configure the boot sequence in the BIOS. 16% said check voltages with a multimeter. 11% said try to boot from a recovery CD. And single digit, 6% said to connect a loopback plug and run diagnostics. So which one of these would really be the first thing you do? These are very controversial questions when people come out of the exams because a lot of people feel that they've been troubleshooting for a long time. They know the best thing to do because they've seen this before. They have a feeling in their bones of what they know the problem is. I know what this problem is just because I have an intuition of what it, well, we're not really asking about intuition. We're really asking about the best way to troubleshoot these issues. And when you turn on your computer and you get a blank screen, there's not a lot of places you can go because you have no idea where the problem is yet because you got almost no feedback. You got some beeps. That gives you a little bit of feedback. But what would this really help you with this? How could we do this? Well, the thing that probably is going to help you the most is trying to get an understanding of why is the computer stopping before you even see anything on the screen. Why is it not showing anything? I actually had this problem on one of my systems. My daughter has a computer where we had a problem with the BIOS and we'd start, the computer would start and have a blank screen. And we wonder what's going on. Now, on this computer, we were able to find out what the problem was by looking at a postcode. On her motherboard, it actually had an LED on the motherboard that showed a code. During the post process, it would flip around as it went through and it got stuck and it shows you what the code is. But another way to do that is to install a postcard. They've got these cards, you can just put it right into a expansion slot and it will show you postcodes. While it's booting up, little numbers will come across. There's usually documentation that tells you what the numbers mean. And usually you can plug this into a PCI or PCI Express slot. You can do parallel. In the chat room, some people said, what about checking the beep code? Well, you probably could, but that wasn't the question, was it? I didn't give you that option. That wasn't one of those. And so you have to watch this on the exam. Is the exam will give you a set number of things. And they're not asking you what all of the things are that you could possibly do. They say from this list, which one of these would you do first? Maybe you're out in the middle of the desert and you don't have the manufacturer's documentation with you and you have no internet connection. Well, can't check the beep codes then. So how about you only have this list? So you don't know what's happening in the scenario. You only know the questions that you have. Don't put more into the question than what is being asked. Don't put more into the answers than what is available. So do that. This is a postcard I bought. I think I bought it on eBay for like 10 bucks, maybe less than that. They're very inexpensive. I bought it just so I could take a picture of it and show it to you literally because it's hard to find pictures of these things to show you. And I wanted to have one that I could show you. This is a postcard that I have. that gives me that. And as I mentioned, a lot of motherboards have it on the motherboard. A lot of the higher end, this was a gaming motherboard that my daughter has, so it's very easy. When we turned it on, we watched the numbers, and we found that it was hanging. I was able to go onto the manufacturer's website, put that code in. It told me what was going on, and it mentioned there's a BIOS issue. If you upgrade the BIOS, that won't happen anymore. It happened when the system would go into suspend mode, and you bring it out of suspend mode, and it would not come out of the mode. It would just sit there. And you actually had to hit a reset button on the motherboard. Take the side off the case, hit the reset button. It was a pain. So these have been around forever. These have been around for as long as we've had expansion slots to some degree. They were around back in the PS2 PC days. Very specific kind of IBM computer back in the day, in the 80s, in the early 90s. So they've been around for a while. This technology, the idea of having a postcard has been around for a while. So it's just something to think about. If you are watching this live stream webinar for continuing education unit credit, then I'd like to give you an opportunity to give you that credit. So one of the things you can do is go to the top or the bottom of my website. There's a Contact Us link. And you want to click that link. You want to put in your name. Make sure you put in your email address. And you want to give somewhere in there, these are notes that are coming directly to me, so you can write anything you'd like in there if you want to communicate back to me. But the thing I'm looking for you to write in there is the word postcard, P-O-S-T card. It's the postcards right here at the top of the screen, postcard. That's your special secret code that tells me you must have watched up to this point, or else you wouldn't know that secret code. And if you do that, I will send you a 1-hour CEU credit. It's a webinar credit so that you can add that to your list of CEUs if that's how you're planning to renew your certification. Just another way to do it. And it's a way that you get something for sitting here and watching this, this entire thing. So let's see how we did with this answer. Indeed, those that answered D, install a postcard on the motherboard. The 43% of you got that one absolutely right. 22% said configure the boot sequence in the BIOS. Well, we're not sure at this point that the problem has anything to do with the boot sequence. If the boot sequence wasn't correct, we would at least see something on the screen. So I tend to believe at that point, it's not a boot sequence problem. We would at least see a message that it wasn't able to boot from whatever it was connected to. So that's not even close to being the problem that we were having. 16% said check voltages with the multimeter. Again, we aren't sure that it's a voltage problem at this point either, because we're seeing things boot up. We're getting beeping noises. We're getting drives that are spinning. It's not like we're seeing nothing. Could it be a voltage problem? Yes, it very well could be, but we're not at the point to that quite yet. We need to understand what we're looking at first, and then we can dive down into other pieces. We can look at the startup process. We can look at voltages. We can look at the cable connections. We can look at other things, but we have no idea if it even has anything to do with power, so that would not be the first thing I would recommend doing. 12% said to try to boot from a recovery USB. Again, we're seeing nothing on the screen, so booting from a recovery USB isn't going to help us either. And connecting a loopback plug and running diagnostics, we're not having a problem with an interface that we need to check to see if the interface is working properly. We're not even at that point yet. We haven't even booted the system. That's not even close to being our issue. It makes sense that only 6% of you would answer that one because that's way off the mark of what we were looking for. So another one idea. Yeah, some of you mentioning those PS2 systems, the microchannel architecture from IBM back in the day and having that there. One of those, nice. So hopefully you're able to understand why installing a postcard in this particular problem with these particular options would be the thing that you would do first and have that there. And hopefully you have a post option available to you to be able to do that. If you've never worked with post codes, you've never worked with an operating system, you never had anything hands-on to do, you might want to go through some labs. At a very bare minimum, you should go to your operating system and do some hands-on. If you'd like something that's a little more structured, where there's multiple systems you can use simultaneously, you might want to look at the live labs from GTS Learning. There's a special price you can get on the live labs by following my link, professormesser.com/live labs, where you can get live labs to be able to work through. Now, these also come with the GTS Learning book. This is the book that I used whenever I started putting together my videos. The folks at GTS Learning have written this book. It's a great book. For $35, you can get that. It comes with 400 practice questions. You can get the book and the labs and the practice questions for $109, which is a significant discount than if you went to the GTS Learning site directly. And again, you can find that by going to professormesser.com/livelabs, something that you might want to be able to do. It's real systems. You've got real virtual machines that you can work through. It's all in your browser. You don't have to install any extra software. It doesn't use any massive resources on your computer. You don't need tons of disk space. You don't need lots of memory. It's a click and go kind of thing. It works great with HTML5 right in your browser, and very useful to have that there. So if that's something you're thinking about, there's a lot more information. You can read about it on professormesser.com/livelabs. Be able to do that. Let's do another troubleshooting question. You seem to like that one, right? So let's do another one. I've got another troubleshooting question for you. This one dealing with shutting down your computer. The question is that you shut down your computer normally each day, but on startup, you always receive the message that says, Windows did not shut down successfully. I thought I shut it down successfully. Windows doesn't think that I shut it down successfully. So which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? That's the one you need to think about, the best next troubleshooting step. It's a very common question you'll get on the exam. So that's our challenge. We shut down our computer normally. You ever know there's people at work, they just turn their computer off. They don't go through the normal startup. You cringe when you see that happening. No, you should shut it down normally. And you're smart enough to shut it down normally. System shuts down, but when you turn it on, it says that it did not shut down successfully. So which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be A, run a hardware diagnostics from the BIOS? Would it be B, start Windows normally? Would it be C, reinstall the operating system? Would it be D, perform a hard reset? Or would it be E, launch startup repair? One of these really would be the best next troubleshooting step. Could you do others to troubleshoot? Yes. There's probably 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things here, that maybe all 5. Could be a troubleshooting step. In fact, all 5 could be. But I'm asking you for the best next troubleshooting step. What would be the first thing that you do in being able to work with this? Maybe you happen to know the answer, and if you do, no answer there. You want to be able to go through and see if you figure this one out. Best next troubleshooting. This comes directly from the exam objectives. You're wondering, where am I getting these troubleshooting scenarios? They are written almost word for word in the exam objectives. The real key is knowing what you do when this happens. So there's really, obviously on a computer, hundreds and hundreds of things could occur on a computer. Fortunately, the exam objectives give us some very specific scenarios, specific errors, and specific problems to be able to work with this. And you want to be able to work the best next troubleshooting step. Maybe to work through this. Maybe you know what it is. And if you do, you can, I'm going to take a sneak peek. You guys answered this one fast. Nobody was Googling this one. That's how I know. When you answer slowly, there's some Googling going on. You guys answered fast on this one, but did we get it right? Let's find out. We shut down our system. It says, it looks like it shut down normally, but Windows starts up the next day and says did not shut down successfully. What do? Almost half of us, 49%, said launch, startup, repair. With 25% of us, a quarter, said to run hardware diagnostics from the BIOS. 14% said to start Windows normally. 10% said perform a hard reset. And only nobody, says 0%, said to reinstall the operating system. I thought reinstalling the operating system is what you should do every time, but apparently not. According to you, that's not what you should be doing. And you're probably smarter than that. So whenever this happens, you get this message that says Windows did not shut down successfully. It's this message that pops up on the screen when you start Windows. This is the Windows error recovery window. This is a screenshot of it. Windows failed to start a recent hardware or software change. Or it says that Windows did not shut down successfully. There's a number of things that might show up on the screen, and then it gives you options. What should you do? Well, if you're like me, you just click Start Windows normally. Just ignore all of it. I don't even read it. Just start up. Click, 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 click. Probably not the best option, by the way. You're not solving the problem. Maybe it will be able to recover normally. If you go through and just say, just start up. Don't go through anything else. Just start Windows normally. The problem is it's probably going to happen again. So that may not be what you want to do. One of the things that can really automatically fix a lot of problems is to run the Windows Startup Repair. There's an option on the screen that says Launch Startup Repair. In fact, it even tells you on the screen, this is recommended, as in parentheses, recommended. It's trying to prompt you and tell you this really is what you should be doing. We know you're going to click the other one, but this is really what you should do. It tries to prompt you and tell you from this window. And in fact, that is the right answer because it will check all the normal things in startup. It'll see if any of the startup files have any problems associated with them. Maybe something got corrupted. Maybe there's a problem in the registry. It will identify those things and attempt to solve those problems. This comes directly from the 22902 section 4.1 operating system troubleshooting. So those of you that did answer launch startup repair, 53% of you, indeed, that's exactly what you should do. You should launch startup repair. That is the right answer. The half of you, the 53%, did get that one absolutely right. 24% run hardware diagnostics from the BIOS. This is an operating system problem that says that Windows didn't shut down properly. Probably doesn't have anything to do with the hardware. Probably has nothing to do with the hardware. Something that's completely a Windows issue. So that's not really going to help us very much. 13% to start Windows normally. My people, I like you, but you're not fixing the problem. That's what we do. Just skip the issue. Just ignore it. Put your fingers in your ears. La, 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 la. But indeed, you're probably going to have the problem again tomorrow. D, perform a hard reset, 10%. On your computer, effectively on your PC or your laptop, a hard reset is to power down completely and power back up. That's effectively what you're doing in the morning. You're shutting down normally each day and you're starting back up. So you really are performing a hard reset when you do that. But only 10% said that's not really the answer. And of course, nobody said reinstall the operating system, which probably would solve the problem, wouldn't it? But it's not really going to do the best thing. Not really going to be the right answer. It takes so long to install the operating system. You have to restore everything from backup. That's not the best answer. Maybe ultimately something we have to end up doing. That's not the first thing we should do. And in fact, this is the first thing we should do, is to launch startup repair. If you did answer E, the 54% of you launch startup repair, you got that one absolutely right. Well, can you believe we have gotten through an hour of Q&A? That went really, really fast. I will tell everyone again, super important that you go and get the exam objectives. Make sure that you go to either professormesser.com/objectives or you go to Google and type in CompTIA exam objectives and you download these. Everything you need to know is in there, step by step, every word of every topic. People ask me all the time, what are the things I need to know for the exam? They're in there. It's a very detailed list, something you never get with other people. Cisco doesn't do this. Microsoft doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Nobody else gives you this level of detail but CompTIA. So make sure you take advantage of those. We've got another study group also next month on the 6th is our next A+ study group. Next week is our Network Plus study group. The week after that is the Security Plus study group. I got a week off after that, and then we're back with the live A+ study group on September the 6th. If this is after the 6th of September, you can go to professormesser.com/calendar and find out any time when the next study group is going to be. Yes, those of you that showed up just in the chat room, I'm sorry, we just finished the live Q&A, but we have another hour or so. I'll just open up the phone lines. You're welcome to call in and see what's going on. Make sure you check out Twitter. You check it on YouTube. Some folks are saying in the chat room we're well over 200,000 subscribers. Some of you did not take it back. You stayed there. Indeed, we're well over 200,012. Can't wait to tell Mrs. Professor Messer what we were able to do today. That's very exciting. There is also, don't forget about my A+ course notes at professormesser.com/A+CN. Your support will help us get to 400,000 subscribers, help us get to 1 million subscribers. I'll keep doing this as long as you keep watching. It's really that simple. Also, don't forget about my pop quiz collection for 901 and 902 is at professormesser.com/PQC. The folks at GTS Learning have their great books and live labs at professormesser.com/live labs. And of course, don't forget about the calendar. And thank you so much for showing up for what we're doing here. We would not be able to do these live events. Imagine going to the list. Let's see how we did. 0% for A, 0% for B. It'd be a pretty boring study group without you participating, being in the chat room. stick around for another hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines, and you're welcome to call and ask a question about anything. It doesn't even have to be about technology. It can be about whatever you're thinking, and we'll be glad to answer those. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But for now, at least, we finished our first hour. Thanks for showing up. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. I've got to set up the dial-in lines. The call-in studio I will turn on right now. Host a show. That's what I want to do. I want to host a show. Let's host that show. Host the show. Turn this down. Now I need to call in because it's all in the cloud. Let's click the Skype. Let's tell Skype to call in. Beep, 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 beep. There we go. And it says, what do I need to do?
Host and call screener.
Okay, I know.
Enter your show number.
I will enter my show number. And do I hit the pound key?
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
I'm going to change that. And what's the last number?
Welcome.
I think I'd remember this by now. So if you would like to call in, I know. Okay, we got it. There's the phone line. If you're watching this live, you can call the phone line. It's 855-785-RJ45. If you're on Skype, you can call for free on Skype. It's a toll-free number. Anywhere in the world, put a +1 at the beginning. +1, 855-785-7545. If you're watching this on the replay, you can still call the number. You can leave a message. And if your message is one that doesn't ramble on for 7.5 minutes, you know who I'm talking to. Then I'll be able to replay it. We can even talk about it on the next study group. When they're a little long, it's a difficult thing to get it down to a smaller number. So, but let's start with some phone calls. I've got a few that have called in. Let's go to the 202 area code. I should turn you up so we can hear. Hello, caller. What's your name?
Hi, this is Moses. Am I speaking to Professor Messer?
Moses, you are indeed. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
So I have a quick question about right before the exam. So I've been told that I'm given a laminated piece of paper and a marker.
Yes.
To write notes. So do you know how much time I'm given before the exam actually starts to write the notes?
Oh, this is technically looking at the exam, the rules of the exam. You're given no time at all to do that. In fact, some testing centers, they will prevent you from writing anything on that piece of paper until you hit the start button and the clock is actually counting for the real exam. What a lot of people will do, however, is a lot of testing centers will shuffle you into the room. They'll put down the piece of laminated paper and the really ugly thick pen. Maybe you bring your own dry erase marker. That might help. And they'll sit you down and they'll present you with the candidate agreement. That's the first thing you have to go through. And you're allocated somewhere around 12 to 14 minutes, depending on what test you're taking. That clock will be counting down for those 14 minutes to allow you to read through the candidate agreement, which is something you have to agree to before the exam actually starts. What a lot of people will do is write some things down. They've already read through the candidate agreement, or they don't care about reading through the candidate agreement. And instead of reading through it, they'll start writing on that piece of paper, and then they will agree to the candidate agreement and continue on with their exam. Technically, that's not allowed. Technically, that is a breach of the policy for the exam, but that is just something that some people will do. It just depends on the testing center you get and how precise they are with the rules and the regulations. I'm seeing a lot more people tell me these days, oh no, they won't let me write anything until I start the exam. So somebody must have sent a memo around. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight.
Right, I'll keep that in mind. Do you know, out of curiosity, whether the moderators are actually really strict about that by chance?
In the past, they have not been, but I'm getting more and more emails and notes and people in the chat room that are telling me, no, they're being a little more strict about it now. I think it really just depends on the testing center you go to and how well trained the moderators are. They're the ones that are having to allow or disallow that, so you just never know what you're going to get. So you should just plan for the worst and you'll be okay.
Sounds good to me. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Thanks for calling. Talk to you later, Moses. There are There's a lot of rules and regulations associated with that. In fact, people in the chat room are even saying, yep, they didn't let me write anything until I started the exam. I'm seeing more and more of that. People in the chat room also asking, are there partial credit on multiple answer questions? I would bet very rare. In fact, if it's a multiple choice question, I would doubt they would ever provide multiple, or they would provide partial credit. That just doesn't make sense to me. They're asking you a question and they're asking you to answer all of the things that apply, and there's multiple answers. If you don't answer all that apply, you didn't know. Why would I give you partial credit on something you didn't get right? So I wouldn't think so. Now, CompTIA is not telling us. That's just sort of me thinking out loud from that perspective. The 559 area code, I'll click that button. There we go. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello, sir. I'm Abdullah from Morocco.
Oh, welcome.
I called you just, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I call you to know, I have an inquiry I want you to ask about it. I got my A+, and as soon as I start to study about security, I find that I have a lot of things I don't know about networking. So I don't know if I have to go through network first, then go to security, or go to security and try to go back to things I don't know about networking.
Yeah, if you start looking into security, you will find that the foundation of IT security is just all networking. I'm speaking as someone who worked as a senior systems engineer for a next generation firewall company for almost 7 years. Before that was writing security textbooks. So I've worked in the field with security professionals on their IT teams for many years. And the thing that was overwhelming with security is it's almost all networking with a little layer of security on top of it, because you're dealing with network address translation, you're dealing with integrating layer 3 routing and layer 2 devices and even layer 1 devices into the network. When you're talking about IPS and talking about firewalls, you're setting up VPN tunnels, which require a huge networking component associated with them. But then you've got all the other things on top of that. You got certificates and encryption and dealing with all of the security rules and dealing with the way the security devices logged information. So there's this massive underlying networking component, and then also a massive overlying security component. So security really the best of both worlds. So you've probably seen, as you've gotten into security, as you mentioned, networking's a big part of it. And I think a lot of people will jump into Security Plus and have no experience in IT whatsoever, but they just have to study a little bit more. I don't think it requires that you go all the way back and get Network Plus before taking Security Plus. I think you can do it all at the same time by just taking Security Plus, but I think it's easier if you have some knowledge about networking when you jump into the security side, because then the idea of configuring a security rule on a firewall that deals with TCP and UDP port numbers is already known to you. You already know what TCP and UDP is. You already know what port numbers are. You probably have a familiarity with what port numbers are associated with what applications. It becomes so much easier to be able to do that. So that's why I think it helps. For Security Plus, not required. If you get into more advanced security certifications, then you're going to really need some networking foundation before you jump into it. Does that make some sense?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. The question is, I would like to ask about if I should take CCNA or Network Plus.
That's another common question, and one that it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not even should I take this one or should I take this one? It really is more of both of those certifications. The question was about CCNA. It was a little choppy there. But the question is, should I take the Cisco and work towards a Cisco CCNA routing and switching, I'm assuming there, or should I get a Network Plus? They are two dramatically different exams. They are completely different. And if you look at the exam objectives, you'll see things that are similar between them. You will see that when I'm looking at them, that indeed, that one talks about port numbers, this one's different. Network Plus is designed to be an entry-level networking certification, whereas the Cisco series of exams from the very beginning with their ICND1 and their ICND2. But even on the ICND1, you're doing a ton of hands-on. You're getting deep into routing protocols. You're understanding deep into switching technologies and how they operate. You're at the command line. It's a very, very different exam. If you're already familiar with networking, you might want to bypass Network Plus because a lot of the same topics are covered on the ICND1, but past that, it's a very different exam. It's almost like 3 Network Plus exam, and certainly much more complicated when you get into the details of it. So it really depends on what your goals are. If you are ultimately planning to be a network administrator, you might want to skip the Network Plus and already know that you're going to be studying a little bit more when you get into the ICND1. If you have no plans at all to get into the network administration world, you're not going to be going into security, you're focusing on operating systems and servers or databases, then maybe Network Plus is a better option. It really depends on what your ultimate goals are.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I got all I want. Thank you.
Appreciate your calling. That's great. Good luck. That's one where I go through trying to figure out what is the right test to take, and there's not a right one. It depends on what you're doing. There's not a list I can tell you to say, start here, go to this one, and go here, and you're done. You've got the path. Everybody's path is different. Let's go to the 330 area code caller. Thanks for holding. What's your name?
Oh, Marcus. I called you before in the past.
Hey, Marcus.
Yeah. Nice talking with you again. Anyways, in a couple of weeks, I'm actually going off to college currently to fulfill a degree in computer science, mainly information security.
Excellent.
I do have a question, just a quick question about the Security Plus and probably something else, but does the Security Plus cover reverse engineering and any other computer science topics?
It is almost devoid completely of computer science topics. Now, for those of you that are listening in, you're sort of in this world of, isn't IT and computer science the same thing, right? These are very different. And we kind of separate the worlds into 2 different categories as far as technology is concerned. There is computer science, which really focuses, and I'm speaking in very generic terms, but it really focuses on application development, programming, engineering of computer devices. You're programming chips, you're configuring and developing your own hardware. It is the programming side of things. But generically, you can think of programming and development is computer science. Then there's effectively everything else. There's information technology is what we put under that bucket. Information technology is the management of workstations, of servers, of databases, of networks, of IT security, which deals more with firewalls and intrusion prevention and the topics that you would find in the Security Plus certification. But Security Plus focuses almost exclusively on the IT side of things and has almost no aspect of computer science in it. There's a little bit of overlap when you get into understanding what a buffer overflow is, but that's a very high level idea that also applies on the IT side when you're trying to protect against these problems. But it doesn't go into looking at malware, reverse engineering, doing a decompiling and having a look and stepping through the machine code. It deals with nothing relating to that. If you're getting into malware analysis, if you're getting into designing systems, that's the type of thing you'll want to do. And none of that is in the Security Plus certification.
All right. I guess I should also ask, could this computer science degree, could it actually bounce off into an IT job possibly? Like a job at, like, let's say a California company like Google or something like that. Could I theoretically get a job there with my CompTIA certifications like the Security Plus and all that whatnot and a computer science degree? Is it possible or?
Well, it's certainly possible, although with computer science, you've gone through a 4-year degree. The last 2 years have probably been very focused on application development, on understanding object-oriented programming, on putting together some more advanced functionality with programming and development, and maybe even designing hardware to some degree. that has very little overlap to the IT world, because the folks that are managing servers, that are managing workstations and operating systems and Linux and networking and switches and routers and IPsec tunnels and configuring security systems and SIMs and IPS and getting all those together, they don't do a lot of programming. And I see a lot of, in the world, there's a big push for some reason in the United States anyway to have everybody understand how to code. And it boggles my mind, because I went through quite a career in IT and really didn't have to do a lot of programming at all. There's some scripting, and you should know a little bit about scripting, but let's be clear, scripting is not application development. There's not a lot of jobs relatively speaking, there's not a lot of computer science jobs available for people in the United States versus IT positions. There's a lot more IT positions available for people in the United States than application development positions, just because of the way the industry has been molded over the last 20 years, more than that, really. It's really about what you want to be able to do. So this is the time where you get to sit back at least and think about, where do I want to go? That's a difficult thing, because I didn't plan this 30 years ago when I started working in IT. You just sort of follow the path. But there are certainly probably things in your mind that you like doing. If you like creating your own apps, you like building your own mobile device apps, you like building apps on the web, you like working with programming, then absolutely follow that path. If you're someone who likes setting up operating systems, you like connecting databases together, you like architecting networks, maybe there's an IT side you would rather lean on. There's not a lot of overlap between both of those.
All right. Well, with the scripting one, I would assume that would have a little bit have to do with the penetration testing, since you had to read JavaScript and whatnot, or to actually understand what you're doing during like a penetration test and whatnot. Somewhere around that.
Well, there is a component of that, yes, from a security perspective. But even when you do penetration testing, and I can go on another hour and talk about the falsities of having a job that does penetration testing, because there aren't a lot of jobs like that. There's very few jobs in the world that have any pen testing components associated with them to any major degree. There are a lot of people think penetration testing, it's a sexy job title. That's what I want to do. I want to go around the country, around the world, and start banging on these networks and find the holes. That's great. There's not a lot of jobs out there for that. The most common security job is IT security. You're managing firewalls. You're managing intrusion prevention. You're doing URL filtering. You're setting up IPsec tunnels between yourselves and third parties. You're doing the incoming and outgoing. You're setting policies. You're setting reports and configuring SIMs. That's what you do in IT security. Very little of that has anything to do with scanning your network, quite honestly. There's probably a little bit of a component in your job description. That's not really penetration testing. And even then, people do penetration testing don't need to know programming either. The penetration test and the automated systems do all that for you. There's a more advanced functionality, and there are jobs that people do that are penetration testers. So don't think I'm saying there aren't jobs like that out there. Of course there are, but there's not a lot. And it does help if you have some application development knowledge, because you can do the decompilation, you can look at machine code, you can grab these things that you've never seen before and start figuring out what the operating system is doing with it. But those are very unusual positions. They're very specific. Maybe it would at least help to have some computer science background, but in most cases, that's not even something you would have to rely on to be able to do that particular position. There's just not a lot of overlap there, but you can find those little niches. Maybe there would be a little bit. So that's true.
All right. I guess I'll just also maybe do more certifications over the summer as well. Maybe get my CCNA and Microsoft certifications, and more CompTIA, like the Project Plus, the Server Plus, Cloud Plus.
The world is your oyster. You've got options. And with IT, you could do anything. With IT and computer science, you've got tons of options available. Find the thing that interests you the most. I think your idea is good. Try some Microsoft. Try a little Cisco. Try a little third-party security. Try something and see which one resonates with you the most, and follow that path. That's not going to be the path you follow for the next 30 years. You're going to deviate. When I started doing this, there was no internet, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. You never know what's going to happen in the next 10 years. So right now, focus on what you like, because ultimately that's the thing you're going to be best at.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to be really fun for the next couple of years and whatnot. I am really excited to see what's going to happen in the next few years, especially technology and whatnot, and my career.
And I as well, Marcus. I want to thank you for calling, and best of luck. Let us know how it goes.
Yep, you too.
That's the best position to be in, isn't it? You just decide what you would like. I wish I could go back and decide something. I probably decide exactly the same as it turns out. Let's see where we go here. How about the 757 area code you've been holding for a while? Thanks so much. What's your name?
Hi, Professor Messer. My name is Rosalind. I have a quick question.
Sure.
Does the ebook training consist of all the Windows operating system?
So you're referring to the live labs I spoke about earlier, or is there something else you're thinking of?
Sir.
Oh, the live labs focus on the objectives dealing with operating systems, networking, and security for the 901 and the 902 exams. If you follow the professormesser.com/live labs, they break each one of the labs down. You can even see what they were discussing, but it's almost all relating to the Windows operating system. There is some Linux in there as well, because there is Linux on the exam that you have to know. So there's some Linux sprinkled in there. Fortunately, you don't have to know a ton of Linux, but there are quite a few command lines you do need to know. And a lot of it is working in Windows, setting up shares, setting up the security, working with the firewall, all of the things that you see in the exam objectives, they've got in those live labs.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rosalind. You too. It's one of those where when you start working with them, I didn't have any of the live labs up on my screen to show, but it's a whole virtual environment with multiple servers, and you've remote desktoped in. It's a really nice setup. A lot of the screenshots I use in my videos, a lot of the screenshots come from those live labs, because I can pop them up at an instant, and I've got a VM available, and I can bring anything up on the screen. Let's go to the 786 area code. You've been holding a while. Thanks so much. What's your name? Are you there, caller? 786. You're on mute.
Hello.
There you are. Hey, what's your name?
Hi, my name's Razul. I just found out about your website through another friend at school. He told me that actually I'm doing an IT track for a bachelor's at university. I was wondering, do I need to do the A+ and Network Plus, or will a bachelor's be suffice?
Well, you don't need to do anything ultimately, but it's more about what would make you the most marketable when you complete your degree. So that's probably when you're going to start looking for that first permanent IT job, that first full-time IT job, is when you get that degree. In fact, I tell people you really need at least 3 components to this. It'd be great if you had a formal degree, which sounds like you're going through, which is great. Having some certifications on your CV, on your resume, are also great to have. They add a little bit of flavor. It's different than a formal degree. It works differently. It doesn't replace a formal degree, and a formal degree doesn't replace certifications. They work in conjunction with each other. And the third thing that would be great to have is some practical experience. Maybe that's a part-time job. When I was in college, I worked at the local computing center with a bunch of mainframes, and I did the grunt work. I had the late shifts. I pulled papers off the printer, plots off the plotter. I mounted tapes on the tape drives. It's one where they needed a physical person in there putting things up when the applications required it. But it was a little bit of experience, so I could show a prospective employer, I've worked with this technology, probably not the technology you're using, but I'm used to the environment, I'm used to the people and the terms that were in use. And it gave me a little bit more flavor for my resume when I started handing those things out. And I think it worked out okay with those pieces and having that there. So don't think that a formal degree is going to replace certificates. Don't think that certificates will replace a formal degree, but it's nice to have both.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to ask I heard you talking about pen testing. So pen testing doesn't really have anything to do with security, like cybersecurity then?
Pen testing is a pretty important part of security. Certainly, my point was that a lot of people see, or they think that what they want to do is go be a pen tester. My point was that there's not a lot of jobs out there that are pure pen testing. So if you're working towards pen testing, it's often not a job you get out of school because it requires some more advanced capabilities. People like to ease you into a role like that. And quite honestly, not a lot of jobs like that out there. There are some, but it's a lot of people think that that's a career path. That is not a career path. That is a unusual diversion from your career path. You would really have to work long and hard. You can get jobs that are pen testers. You might even be able to get one as an entry-level pen tester if they're out there, but they're so rare and unusual that it's the competition for them is fierce. It is much more a broader perspective might be a better idea if you're jumping into the market and you're trying to get a full-time position, is my point.
All right, thank you. That was all my questions.
I appreciate you calling. That's one of those where I know people that got out of school that got a pen testing job. So they are out there. I don't know anybody else who ever did it. I know the one of all the people I know in the security world. That's one of those challenges. So the questions in the chat room real quick. What do I think about computer forensics? Again, that's more of a computer science world. Because it deals more with things that are on a system. What an interesting world. You see a lot of computer forensics in the law enforcement world. I happened to get an opportunity to see a computer forensics expert speak at one of the events I was at, and just an intriguing set of technologies. He was getting into caching and where things are stored on a drive and where they're stored in multiple places in the operating system, and deleting things doesn't mean deleting things, and even deleting the things you thought would delete it, don't delete it. You can find them. It was amazing. But it's a world and a science unto itself, certainly, and I think a pretty interesting one. Be worth going through. And having those there. Let's go back to the phones, to the 215 area code, probably down the road. Caller, are you there? What's your name?
Yes, hello. My name is Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
And I had a question about CCNA and CSIP.
Sure.
Currently I've got an A+, and I'm working on my security plus. And funny enough, I'm studying as we're speaking. And I was thinking about afterwards pursuing CCNA and CSIP. So I wanted to know, what do you think about CSIP and CCNA in terms of going right after Security Plus?
Well, this is the market that I think most people are working towards these days, which is security. It's the one that I find most interesting because it's where I was in a permanent job prior to doing this full time. I worked primarily in that IT security market, primarily with firewalls, next generation firewalls. And it is a broad and a very lucrative market. It's a great place to be financially because there's such a need for that right now. When you get past the networking, and I mentioned earlier that having a good foundation in networking is so important when you get into these security jobs, because so much of what you're doing interfaces directly with the network, and understanding OSPF and routing protocols and layer 3 and routers and understanding how switches work and integrating with those is so important. The thing where people go is they usually get their entry-level security certification. They might start with Security Plus, but at that point, the market really diverges to a huge amount. CompTIA released about a year ago the CSA Plus, which is their next level security certification above the Security Plus. Cisco has a CCNA security certification that deals with security on Cisco devices, primarily their firewalls and other security technologies built into their routers and their switches. You also have third parties like ISC Squared, which has the CISSP certification, which most people in security consider that to be somewhat of a gold standard in the industry for security certifications. But it also requires that you have 5 years of full-time experience working in the security, and that has to be confirmed by a third party. So you can't just jump into the CISSP and get that certification. It's another reason that people look to that certification with a little bit more respect, because there's so many more requirements before you can even take that exam to have that there. It really is going to depend on security where you're going and when you get there, what technologies they use. If they are a checkpoint firewall shop, it helps to have checkpoint certifications. If they use Palo Alto Networks, it helps to have Palo Alto Network certifications. If they have Fortinet, it helps to have Fortinet certifications. The certifications and security at that point is very fragmented. There's not a very common path, at least not one as obvious as going into networking. When you're going to networking, you're going to take some Cisco certifications. That's who has that path. You take the ICND1, you take the ICND2, and maybe additional Cisco certifications after that. Security, not quite as well laid out. The market is very fragmented because security is so broad. You have such different technologies dealing with security across the board that you almost have to start specializing in a type of security technology. Maybe you focus on firewalls. Maybe you focus on URL filtering. Maybe you focus on reporting. It just depends on, and a lot of the direction comes from where you go. If you go into a Cisco environment, they may ask for more Cisco certifications. If you go to an environment with a lot of Palo Alto Networks firewalls, they may ask for more knowledge on those. So there's no one answer. It really depends on where you go and what you do. And admittedly, what you do today could be very different than the requirements that you'll be faced with in 2 or 3 years because the market is changing so quickly.
And also for my follow-up question, so after I get Security Plus, I'm also thinking about maybe getting Network Plus as well. And also, I wanted to thank you so much for your videos too. I've been always I've watched all of them before I take the exams, so they've been really helpful with questions. So I wanted to know, what can you do to, I guess, build your confidence in order with certification in your career field?
Are you looking towards trying to figure out, are you going the right direction, or are you thinking more of how do I get more confident going into taking the exam?
I wanted to know, how do I get more confident in getting a job with the certification from the exam?
Yeah, that's you won't. This is one of those challenges when you get your first job or when you get any job. This seems to be very common, especially in IT, is that you get into a job and you're just a dummy. There's no way a human being going into a new position with any company will be familiar with everything running inside that organization because they probably have very specific types of software, different markets. Like if you're going into a call center, that's a very different technology world than going into a hospital. They have very different rules and regulations. There's different technologies they use. Call centers deal more with voice over IP and blending call technologies together. Hospitals deal more with large files and keeping things private. They're so different, but yet you're still running Windows. You're still using Linux. You've still got databases. There's some things that are the same between them. So the goal is to get as comfortable as you can with the core, get as comfortable as you can with the operating systems, get as much hands-on with Linux as you can, understand the core, and then when you get into those jobs, start learning as much as you can about everything that's along the outside so that you can become much more familiar and much more confident with working with those. But the people who are hiring you, they know you can't possibly know all of this. There will be not a week or two to get you up to speed. It's going to be months. You'll finally feel comfortable 6 months into that job. That's just normal in technology because it's so big, it's so broad, and even then you're not going to know everything in your environment. Does that help some, Jeff? Did I lose you?
Yes, that helps a lot. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, sir. Thanks for calling. That's one of those where people think you just jump into these roles and now you're the person who's got to be the expert on everything. Oh, no. There's going to be a ramp. Sometimes the ramp's a little faster than normal. It's up to you and what you're doing. But there's jobs where finally 6 months in, okay, I finally got it. Finally, at least I know where these things are and I can start adding to what I need to know for those particular roles. Let's go to the phones. 703 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? I need to turn you up there. Are you there, caller?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey,
Hi, how are you?
Hey, what's your name?
My name is Lace. I honestly, I think you're one of the, greatest people out there that gives, good advice and all. I have two questions here. The first one is that I graduated out of high school 2 years ago. I went into college, so a community college.
Okay.
And I was planning to get my associate degree, right? So the first semester went well, but then 2 semesters after that, it didn't go well.
Me too.
My class, sorry. So my classes didn't go well. So I decided, during the time of college, I was like, okay, might as well get my A+ certification. So it's been like 6 months. I go on and off studying it, trying to find a new job, going into IT and all that stuff. So I finally decided to, study as hard as I can just lately. So I'm planning to go into network and telecommunications.
Great.
Yeah. So the other thing is that with that, I like working more with hands-on. I like doing stuff with hardware. I can't just sit there in front of a computer and just work on software all day. So I chose hardware.
Yep.
Yeah. So, that's one of the things. And I would like, some advice on what to do in the sense of, acting as quick as I can and what motivations do I need to work on getting my certifications, whether it's A+, Network Plus, and what certifications would I need to go into the network and telecommunication field.
You're a little bit ahead of the game because you've already got in your mind, here's what I want to do with this. You've heard some other people calling that say, I'm not even sure what direction I want to go with. And at least you've chosen, yeah, let's do this. This interests me. This is a technology I can get my teeth into. I can spend some time with it. As you mentioned, it's not about programming. It's not about sitting in front of a screen all the time. It's more about understanding how the traffic is flowing between devices. I can work with routers. I can work with the switches. I can connect to wide area network connections. I can work at service providers. I can work at a telecommunications company. There's lots of options out there, and that's a great option to go with. So let's just focus on that path and say that's where we want to start. Who knows where it's going to go, but we're going to start right there. That's one that now you can start adding on what the employers are looking for. Every geography, it seems, every part of the country and part of the world has different requirements for these jobs. Some employers don't care about certifications. Some employers don't care about formal education. Some employers care greatly about certifications and greatly about formal education. It just depends. So one of the things I would highly recommend doing is finding out what employers in your area are looking for and what employers maybe outside of your area are looking for as well. And that's easy to do for telecommunications because there's a lot of telcos, there's plenty of service providers, there are plenty of companies that deal with networking, large organizations, large companies that do networking, so you can find out what they're hiring. But also don't miss an opportunity to start meeting those people. There are certainly in a geographical area, a Cisco users group in your area, whether it's one that meets formally or one that meets online. You want to meet those people because those are the people in the companies in your area that are doing networking. And it's important to build those relationships now before you get to the point where you need to find the job. It's one of those where I think we forget in working with computers and network that it's really more about people. We're connecting people together so they can do what they need to do. There just happens to be a technology component associated with it, and those people are going to be hiring. So we need to know who those people are in your area. Join your Cisco user group. Join your Microsoft user group. Get to meet the people in your area who need technology specialists, because when you walk in, you can say, oh, I know somebody who works here. They're part of the user group I'm a member of. I met them last month, or we did some things. Watch their presentation, whatever it happened to be. That's one thing you can do right off the bat. Secondly, make sure that you are very familiar with the underlying technology. So if you're going to networking, Network Plus is a good place to start. Getting some Cisco certifications, also a good direction to go. And it really depends on how comfortable you are with the technology to where you start. Some people like to start with Cisco, but you've got a higher ramp to get the knowledge you need to pass that certification than if you had started with Network Plus and then jumped into the Cisco. It just depends on how familiar you are with it. But I think those things will help you figure out the path you're going to take. Everybody's got a different path, but you will be able to meet some people, find some jobs, find out what people are looking for, and then focus on those requirements. And if you know that the local company likes to have somebody with a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, and or some certifications, you can walk in the door with those and say, all right, when can I start?
So when you're talking about Cisco, do you mean like CCNA?
Almost always, it's starting with the CCNA series certification, specifically CCNA routing and switching, if we're talking about networking. There's a lot of different CCNAs. There's CCNA security, there's CCNA routing and switching, there's all these different ones that Cisco has. Most people, when they say CCNA, they really mean CCNA routing and switching, and that consists primarily of the ICND-1 exam and the ICND-2 exam. I have a video out of my YouTube channel that does describe what is required to get a CCNA routing and switching, and that might be worth the time to look through that video because I break down what all those different exam options are. You can take 2 exams, you can take 1 exam, what's on these exams, what do I need to be able to pass these exams, do I need hardware, could I just use software? I go through all of that. Those may be something to look at.
Okay, so just to make it clear, you're saying that, bothering with the A+ is not going to really do much for me.
If your focus is networking, there's a very little component associated with networking on the A+. If you were going into workstation management, if you're going to be taking care of servers, if you are going to be taking care of Linux operating systems, A+ is a pretty good foundation for that. There is a little bit of networking in A+, but if your focus is really networking, then the Network Plus is probably the best place to start. If I was going to put a minimum, that's a good minimum and working up from there. Would A+ help you? Probably in a tertiary role outside the scope of networking, gives you a little bit of perspective of the things you'll be networking together, but not really a pure networking certification.
Okay. Well, that finally, that actually makes it clear for me. I do appreciate, you telling me all this information. I'm going to start right away with, the Network Plus and just work with my way up there.
That's a great place to start.
I'll go ahead and if I want the A+, I'll do it later.
That's why I did the Security Plus first, then the Network Plus, then the A+. I did it exactly in reverse. So you could be exactly the same.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for calling. It's one of those where find the path that works for you. That was the path that worked for me. Was it weird? Yes, obviously. That was weird. Let's go back to the phones. The 540 area code's been holding for a while. Thanks so much. What's your name?
Hi, this is Ellie.
Hey, Ellie, what can we do for you?
I actually had 2 questions.
All right.
I got my 3 certifications, and I'm kind of frustrated because I wanted like a remote technical support position. And a while back, I had seen a lot of those through some online job boards.
Sure.
And now it's like they've dried up and it's a desert. So I was wondering if you had any ideas on sites or companies that specifically deal with that.
I think some of these are very cyclical. I think what a lot of companies do, and you will see this quite a bit when you get into the world of IT, is that a lot of organizations that are not IT companies, if you're a power company, you're not an IT company. If you're a transportation company, you're an airline, you're a train transportation, you're not an IT company. But a huge foundation of what you're doing is IT related. And you'll see a lot of companies go through these cycles of they will outsource their IT. You'll see stories about this all the time. We've outsourced it to either a company that's here in the U.S. or outside the U.S. They outsource it. It's no longer their employees. And you'll also see these companies do a lot of these remote desktop, remote management. And then what they find out is that when you outsource, you lose every bit of quality control associated with this. There's no way to do it. It's all contractual. If it's in the contract, that's what you get, which is the worst type of quality you can expect to have. As I mentioned earlier, IT is about people. It's not about what's in a contract. It's not about how fast you can solve a problem. It's about solving the problem. So that's why you start to see these big, massive groups of people that are doing this remote management, and then suddenly they go away. I think the industry goes back and forth over this. Probably a couple of years, we'll see the remote management, remote fixing suddenly show up again. There is a good bit of that, though, from call centers that are doing remote support. There is a good bit of jobs out there doing remote support, but they're not very common these days, as you've seen. It really is depending on what the hiring managers are needing and what they're wanting in these organizations. And that's why I always tell people in your area, go to Indeed, go to Dice, go to Career Builder, go to these third-party sites that are offering the jobs. See what people are asking for these days, because it changes very, very quickly in our industry.
But there isn't, so those are the ones you would recommend the most for specifically tech positions. Because I'm getting really sick and tired of going on these job sites, and they've got every kind of job under the sun, and I was just wanting something maybe that focuses specifically on tech. There
are companies that have no idea what they need, and they do a very bad job at recruiting, and they do a very bad job at determining what their job requirements are. There's other organizations that have a very well-honed machine. They know exactly what they're looking for. They know exactly the process. They know the type of person they need. I'll give you the same recommendation I did to a previous caller, is you need to start meeting some of these companies. The ones that know what they're doing, they're the ones that have people attending the Microsoft user group meetings. They're the ones that have people attending the Cisco user group meetings. They're the ones that have people in the industry meeting the other people in the industry. And one of the things you're going to find is that in IT, it's not a very enormously large industry. You get to know the people at these other companies in your area. You're hiring people from them. People are being hired by them. You start to get familiar with the people that are working in IT in your area. And that's where you start to get a little more traction when you walk in the door for a job. I've had in my lifetime, my career, I've had probably 12 to 15 different IT jobs. That's a lot, but that's the way it was in the 2000s. There was the internet boom and things just went crazy. So I had a lot of different positions. The first job I got, I didn't know anybody who worked at that company. I'm not even sure how I managed to get that job, but I did. I knew nobody that was there. But every other job I ever got in this industry, I knew somebody who worked there. It was a person I either met and had a relationship with professionally. It's somebody that I knew from a friend, but I knew them. There was a connection there. And that's why I mention LinkedIn a lot, because you can start creating that network of people and keeping track of what they're doing. Many times I've gone to LinkedIn where somebody said, oh, there's a job opening in our company. I'll ping somebody I knew in the past and say, you'd be really good for this. You should put your resume in for that, or see if they have an interest, or see if they know somebody. If you know somebody who's a friend, that adds another level. So don't forget about that part of it. There's a huge human networking part in IT that we don't talk about enough, that will really, really help you when you get into the job market, not only now, but every other job you get in IT.
Okay. And then my second question is about what my long-term goals are, which is right now I think I'm interested in web design. So I was a little bit disappointed because I had someone tell me a while back, you don't really need to know coding, and I don't really have an intense passion for coding. And now it seems like everybody has to know code. So I bought a course on Udemy, and I'm looking at Treehouse, but it seems a bit overwhelming. Like, is there any software that you would recommend that just lets you go in and make the website so that I could at least do that while I'm learning the other stuff?
I manage the ProfessorMesser.com website and many others, the birdfeeder.live website. And there have been others that I manage. I don't know any coding. I put coding into a very specific computer science bucket dealing with creating applications, object-oriented programming, and more advanced functionality. I don't consider HTML to be coding, although technically, I guess you could put it in that bucket. I don't even consider JavaScript, which is used quite a bit on websites, to be coding, but I don't even code any JavaScript, and I'm able to create a website knowing some HTML, knowing how the PHP works, and at least being able to read through it, knowing what components interact with the other components on the site, and I just add and put those pieces together. But if you're able to go to you can get a $5 a month hosting at a HostGator or any other company that's out there doing very inexpensive hosting, and put WordPress on a site and bring up a site and have a nice looking site in literally a matter of minutes. That's what I use for ProfessorMesser.com. It's one that allows me to focus more on the content and less on what's happening underneath. Is there a development and programming that made that happen? Yes. Do I have to know any of it? No. I hate doing programming. I don't want to do programming. I just need a website, and I need to customize the way the website looks. I need to customize the components that are on the website, but I don't want to have to program them. And a content management system, a CMS like WordPress, allows me to do that.
So you would say that probably, I know that WordPress is in high demand, so focusing my attention on learning WordPress would probably be better for me.
I think if you're getting into website development or making a website for somebody, learn what you can about WordPress right now. It's either going to do two things. It'll make you realize, wow, I can really get into this website thing. I really understand how WordPress is working. I really understand how to build things out on the page. This isn't something that interests me. Or you might get into it and say, wow, this is not something I want to do at all. But it's something you'll be able to jump into relatively easily and be able to make that determination.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for calling, Ellie. It's one of those where you can do anything. I'm glad that I worked with WordPress. Prior to using WordPress, I used Drupal and some other CMSs. Didn't really like them so much, and finally ended up on WordPress. I've been on WordPress probably for 10 years now, and being able to work through it. Here's another call. This one's from a Skype call, I think. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Are you there, caller? You can tell there's no...
Hello?
Oh, there he is. Hey, what's your name?
My name is Alan.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Thank you. I've been on hold, so I was listening on the audio, and it was kind of like late for a couple of seconds. That's why I didn't join in right away.
No problem.
Anyway, thanks very much for all the videos you've been doing. I've been following up with all your study groups and all kinds of tutorials that you've been doing. And currently, I have a BTech in computer technology and network maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal is to get to a network administration point. And currently, I'm having a job as a desktop support. And my question is trying to define, like understand what I don't know, because every day I discover new things. Every day I go on social media, I see new things. I'm like, oh, I don't know this, or should I study that, or should I do that? And yeah, I want to get the A+ certification, and then after that, I want to get the N+ and move on. I've been getting a lot of advice from other questions that people have been asking on the side. So I'm a bit versed with what I want, but my lack of confidence is not knowing what I don't know, like feeling confident about knowing the technology, the current technology, and staying up to date. So yeah, I'd like to get your advice on that.
Well, here's the good part about this, and maybe it's a bad part about this, but the good part about this is it's always going to be overwhelming. There's so much in this industry, and it's changing so rapidly that there's no possible way you will know everything about everything. In fact, there's no way to know everything about one thing in this industry. I worked for a startup that dealt with firewalls. My job was to know everything I needed to know, everything about this firewall. I needed to know internally how it worked. I needed to know everything about the software. I needed to know everything about this. And no systems engineer at the company could possibly know everything, because the scope of this single product dealt with networking at layer 1, at layer 2, at layer 3. There was encryption, there was SSL decryption, there was URL filtering, there was IPS, there was IPsec tunnels, there was routing protocols. Nobody knows all of that. So what we ended up doing is we would have people in the organization that knew certain things really well. And if I needed an expert in BGP, I could call my BGP expert. If somebody needed an expert in the REST functions to be able to work with the API, they knew they could call me, because I worked a lot with the API and setting up some scripts. So when you start, I can understand you're sitting down for the A+, and the A+ certification, the two exams itself, are almost overwhelming in the amount of topics they cover. And what's interesting about this is they cover Windows. It's hard to know everything about Windows. It's impossible to know everything about Windows. It covers networking. It's impossible to know everything about networking. It covers security. It's impossible to know everything about security. So don't worry so much about, I don't know, or it seems overwhelming, or how am I ever going to learn all of this? Because kind of the good news about this is that you're never going to know everything there is to know about this. It's a constant growth. There's constant reading. There's constant learning. And you never are going to get to a point, but you're probably going to pick a niche. Once you finish your A+, you've already said you're interested in networking. That's a great niche. Get into networking. Inside of networking, you're probably going to want to learn about the packets. Maybe you'll become the expert at understanding how to read the protocol analyzer. Maybe you'll be the expert on dynamic routing protocols. Maybe you'll be the BGP expert that I can call, instead of me having to worry about how all of those things operate. So the thing you should do now is get the exam objectives from CompTIA for the A+. That's your checklist. Just ignore everything else. Take a block off of that checklist. Learn everything you need to know about that block, and just do it a little bit at a time. Bite off a little piece at a time, so that you can get through all of the different topics for a single exam, and you're going to be fine. What you're seeing is perfectly normal in information technology.
Wow, thank you very much. And yeah, just to conclude with that, one of my alternatives was taking A+ and the N+ and all the learning that's out there as a checklist. So do you think I should feel confident if I have my A+ and I go ahead and I'm studying my N+? Should I feel confident oh, maybe there is nothing out there at that level which I probably don't know? I mean, just within the domain in which I'm very, very much interested. I just want to feel that confident, okay, I'm doing A+ now, so I'm getting everything from Professor Mesa or from other sites. Am I really confident in that? Should I feel confident about having all this?
You're right, though. You're sort of at the point now where you don't know what you don't know yet. So you do need to get through the A+, and maybe even get through the Network Plus. And I think that's a really good jumping off point. After you finish the Network Plus, you should have a pretty good idea what interests you the most. Does working with servers interest you the most? Does working with workstation operating systems interest you the most? Do databases interest you? Do data centers interest you? Does security interest you? Does programming and development, maybe none of this interests you and you want to go do programming? That's the point where you can finally take a step back and look at everything and then decide to go to a direction. Don't worry about picking that direction right now. You don't know enough about what the options are. You don't know what's going to interest you the most. And I think the best thing you can do is to wait to that point, then figure out, I really like networking a lot. I'd love to know more about how these protocols work. I'd love to be able to do some packet decodes. Let's do some of that for a while. And it doesn't matter what you choose. There are jobs out there for each one of those things. You just need to find the thing that interests you the most.
Wow. Thanks very much. I think I've got a little bit of advice there, and I feel a little bit comfortable. And once again, I really want to appreciate the work you're doing and everything you're doing in the free community. It's really helpful. I've been searching all around, and ever since that I think it was early semester meeting. found Professor Mesa's videos, and I was having them like on the USB stick. I never even got to YouTube channel or everything, and it was really helpful. And yeah, thanks very much.
You're very welcome, sir, and thank you. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate your support, and I'll keep making them as long as you keep watching them. That's works for me. Back to the phone lines, 425 area code, if I can push the button. There we go. Are you there, caller, and what's your name?
Yeah, I'm Chris.
Hey, Chris. What can we do for you?
So I'm actually on the West Coast and currently a student at one of the local Institute of Technologies. We do a lot of hands-on over here, and I'm currently in summer quarter getting ready to try and take both the A+ portions and the Network Plus. And I've just been studying a lot, and I'm just kind of I tend to overthink things, so I'm trying to figure out, and I wanted to know maybe some pointers on how to be a bit more confident going into the test. So,
You're right.
That's kind of one of the big ones.
Well, you've got a good path, so you already know kind of what you want to do, so that part's good. I think the one thing that most people don't consider is, first, these exams are so broad. They are huge. The A+ exam alone, each exam is enormous, much less the things associated with that exam. So it's almost overwhelming when you get into dealing with what's on the exam, where to even begin. If you read a book, it's just all over the place on the things you need to know about. The thing I will tell people is get a copy of the exam objectives. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives to get these. The exam objectives will tell you everything you need to know. They literally are a master checklist. So I know you can't see this, but I've got the exam objectives up on my screen. So section 1.0, the big domain 1.0 is about hardware. And it says, given a scenario, configure settings and use BIOS UEFI tools on a PC. The first bullet is firmware upgrades, flash BIOS. So you need to know what a firmware upgrade is. You need to know what flash BIOS is. You need to understand the process for upgrading the firmware on a computer. Next bullet, BIOS component information. You need to understand in the BIOS, looking at RAM, looking at a hard drive, looking at an optical drive, looking at a CPU. If you don't know what that is, you need to now go into a BIOS, look at the RAM, understand how to view the hard drive, look at the optical drive, and understand the CPU information. Next bullet, BIOS configurations, configuring the boot sequence, enabling and disabling devices, setting the date and time, looking at the clock speeds, understanding the virtualization support, looking at the BIOS security, which would be passwords, drive encryption, things like TPM, LoJack, and secure boot. So we've only gone through 3 bullets so far on the A+ certification, and that's a massive amount of information. That's a big chunk for just 3 bullets. But when you start breaking these up into smaller pieces, that's not so bad. I can go into a BIOS. I can look and understand the boot sequence process. I can go through enabling and disabling devices. I can start to understand more about where I can view the virtualization support and what that is. And of course, you've got books and my videos and other things that can help you understand these things as well. So I think that's where most people need to focus. You don't really get this in a college class. They don't give you a completely detailed, bulleted perspective of what you need to know. In fact, that's the question before an exam. Hey, teach, what do I need to know for the exam? And hopefully they can give you an idea. CompTIA already gave you this. They tell you exactly what you need to know for the exam. If you stick to this list and you don't deviate at all from this list and you know everything that is on this list, you will pass the exam. It is that simple. So I say that's simple, but it's that focused. It's that clear of what you need to do to be able to completely pass these exams. You know that information, you're good to go. Focus on that, and it won't at all seem overwhelming in the least.
Yeah, I actually took just for getting the sake of understanding what I was going to be getting into when I took the test. I actually did take one of the 901, but I missed by maybe 40 points.
Oh, so close.
But the experience, I think, was much more important than that fact. But I know that acronyms are really one of my weakest points, and if I can just figure out a way to kind of memorize most of these, I mean, the big question, another big one is, like, how did you start memorizing these? Is it just more through use for you, or do you have any pointers for that?
It's almost always through use. I tell most people I didn't memorize them. I just happen to be working with them so much that now I know what they are. You get into that quite a bit in A+. You get into it a lot in Network Plus. It's almost all acronyms. And that is a challenge. If you've never worked with a BIOS and UEFI, we've already gone through for these 3 bullets. We have BIOS, UEFI, we've got RAM, we have CPU, and we've got TPM. So we've already got like six acronyms already. If you've never worked with RAM, CPU, TPM, or BIOS, these are all brand new things for you. So I tell people, get a good book, watch the videos, do some Q&A, and get some hands-on. It's the muscle memory, I call it, when you start working with these systems and you're working with them at the command line and you're working with the BIOS and you perform a BIOS upgrade and you become familiar with what a BIOS is and what the UEFI is and what the CPU settings are. Now you're more comfortable knowing what those are and they get locked into your brain. It is more about just working with it. And once you do more hands-on, I think the abbreviations will stick a lot better in your mind.
Yeah, I'm actually doing a real gambit. I'm actually taking the network, then the 901, 902 on the upcoming Fridays in a row. So I have, and I've just been kind of worried specifically more about the network because I know the network kind of overlaps with the A+ portions, and that's kind of what I was wondering on that front because it's just that I have a problem recalling some of this stuff. So,
well, find the thing that works for you. It might be flashcards. It might be more hands-on. It might be just reading a book. It might be watching a video. People learn in different ways. There's no single best way for everybody. So find the thing that works. Maybe it's flashcards that works for you, and it's just pure rote memorization. Maybe that clicks with you better than doing hands-on. It's completely up to you.
Okay. I guess so you said that acronyms are a huge portion of the Network Plus, in that at least more so than the A+. So, because I'm just doing generalized memorization, or my professor he threw a lot at us.
Right.
In our third quarter, so it's Network Plus, and we kind of did more in that one quarter than we did in our first 2 quarters, which are the A+ portions, in about a month.
Yep,
so
I get it.
It's a lot to put in. It's just, and I understand a lot of it. It's just I also get test anxiety, so that's kind of my big worry right now.
Me too. I hate the testing process. My adrenaline goes up when I sit down to take the exam. I read the first few questions and I'm not even understanding the words that are on the screen. I think that part's pretty normal. But if you know the content, you can push yourself through the anxiety better than if you don't. So suddenly, okay, I know what they're talking about, and you can get more into the exam and kind of block out everything else. And there may be some things you can try. Somebody last month on the study group was talking about a study or a testing center that gave everyone earplugs. And I thought, why did I not bring my own? That's a perfect thing to bring to the exam. Put the earplugs in, and now there's a whole level of anxiety that goes away because now I'm more focused on what's going on. There may be some things you can do to help with that as well.
Okay. I guess my last question, this is off topic because it's just more about how much paperwork did you do in some of your jobs? Because I know my professor was telling me learn the troubleshooting steps inside and out, and I was just randomly curious about how much paperwork you actually went through when you were in a job.
It's going to depend on the job, the position. A lot of what I did during the last part of my career, really the last half of my career, was focused on pre-sales systems engineering. So it's working for a manufacturer of software, of network management software, of security hardware. And it was a lot of sitting in front of customers or potential customers who needed a product. They need a firewall. And they said, all right, James, show us what your firewall can do. Oh, well, let me demonstrate to you the capabilities. What underneath the hood, how does this thing work? And they would say, great, give us a proposal. We have this many sites. We have these requirements. What would you recommend? And then I would have to go back and effectively create a document that is specific to their needs. What, in my professional opinion, did I think would be the right fit? And what are the costs of those? So it dealt with a lot of word processing. It dealt with a lot of language. It dealt with a lot of pricing, putting things together into big documents. Some of them were relatively casual emails. Some were very formal RFPs that you were presenting. It just depended on the environment that you were in. So a lot of what I did was more of doing reports. Back to school. Here's a report. Create a report. Create a scenario. Some of it was doing post sales. I did a number of firewall migrations, and so you had to map out how are we going to get from this to what the final result will be. Well, let me put together an entire project plan for you and create the project, specify how long the project will take and how much it will cost. So there was a big project management component to what I was doing in that particular role. In IT, traditional IT in an organization, it might be about doing reports, understanding who were the people that authenticated yesterday, how many authentication attempts were made yesterday, and what did they use? Is somebody trying to perform a brute force attack? How can we protect those things? Create a report that shows those. So if you're in a hospital, a completely different set of requirements for paperwork, and for financials, a completely different one again. So it's really going to depend on the job you're going into, but the better you are at communicating over email, forget all the other things. If you can put together a well-structured, a succinct, and a very focused email to someone, that will help you probably more than any other communication aspect you will work with in your job. And I think that goes beyond IT. I think that's really anywhere, but I think especially in IT.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. I feel a little bit better. Still, it's just going from one to the next is just a lot of stuff to deal with. So, but feeling a little bit better.
It's an aggressive schedule. Just take it a piece at a time, Chris.
All right. Thanks.
Best of luck.
Bye.
That's the real challenge, is how do you do all of that? There's so much there to deal with. I get it. Oh boy, do I get it. Let's go to 631 area code. Are you there, caller?
Hello?
Hey, what's your name?
My name is Chris.
Another Chris. Welcome, Chris. What can we do for you?
So, I got my A+ certification a few weeks ago.
Congratulations. Excellent.
But I was unsure about what I could do about looking for a job, because I don't have like a 4-year college education because of learning disability and expense of getting one. So, how necessary is a college education for finding any kind of job in IT?
It's almost the scenario that it could be very important or it could be not important at all. Technology is one that kind of gives you a little bit more flexibility than perhaps other types of jobs that you could be looking at. So there's an advantage you have right there. I worked with someone in a previous position who was incredibly successful at what he did, who became both professionally and financially successful at what he was doing and had no college degree. It's not something that's required for what we do. It helps, especially when you're first getting into a job. It helps if you have a formal education, but it's not something that you must have. There's some jobs in the world where you have to be a PhD to even be considered for a particular job. Fortunately, in IT, we don't have that. But it means you're going to have to compensate in other ways. You're either going to need additional certifications. Maybe you're going to need more practical experience. Maybe you start volunteering somewhere so that you can get some practical experience. Maybe you start working more with and knowing people that are in the industry. I mentioned earlier about going to Microsoft user groups, to Cisco user groups. If you don't have a formal education, building those relationships is even going to be more important than if you had a 4-year degree to fall back on. If you know somebody at an organization, they know your capabilities, they're familiar with the things you do, they will be more apt to hire you. So always take advantage of all of those. You've got the other things I mentioned, though, to think about. So formal education was one, certifications is another, practical experience, and you can add to that the personal networking piece. So although you don't have the formal education to have there, you've got those other three that you could focus on. Do that. Make sure you get as much in those other three areas as you can.
Oh, and I had another question.
Sure.
Generally speaking, about volunteering. Do hospitals generally have any volunteer positions that would help? Anything that's IT related?
I would say, for the most part, I would say that hospitals do not. They're such a controlled environment. There are such sensitive pieces of information at these organizations that you don't tend to see banks and hospitals or insurance companies doing a lot of volunteering or allowing a lot of volunteering for technology, because the information they have there is so incredibly sensitive, and they have federal mandates, at least in the United States, probably and others around the world, that restrict what people are able to do with that data. So you don't tend to see much volunteering. There's other parts of the hospital where volunteering is big, and that's more of the meet and greet, show people around. I don't even know if they do candy striping anymore, where you have someone who's learning to be a nurse will go in and do the clinicals and that type of thing. But you don't tend to see that on the IT side. You tend to see more volunteering at organizations that are more third party. What's some word I'm thinking about? It's ones that are charities that are 801(c)(3)s, that are 802(c)(3)s. There are nonprofit. There are organizations that need additional help but don't necessarily have the financial capabilities to provide that help, and they love to get people involved with those. Maybe libraries, those types of things can really come in handy. There was at least one time a volunteering website that provided a list of organizations in your area, and maybe it was justserve.org, but there's a bunch of different websites, Volunteer Match, where you may be able to find a place in your community that needs some computer help. That may be a great way to get started.
Hey, just one last question.
Sure.
I'm going to be speaking with a job developer to see what jobs are out there. But in the meantime, I was thinking about going for the Network Plus, but I don't have any job experience to help get it. Most of the experience I have is just working on my own computer at home and fixing issues, with my computer.
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure if I should go for the Network Plus or not.
Well, there's some things you can do even in a home environment to learn more about networking. Maybe you want to put up your own firewall, download pfSense, install pfSense, maybe even in a VM, a virtual machine, and play around with that firewall. Configure the IPS settings. Work with the firewall rules. Grab a switch. Maybe somebody has an old Cisco switch or an old Cisco router. Connect them up to your existing network. Configure some switch settings. Maybe even go through some of the Cisco labs that are out there. There's tons available online to look at some of those pieces. That would be a great thing to do as well if you're looking to get into networking. You don't have to do any of those things to learn about the Network Plus exam and pass it, but the more hands-on and the more labbing you do will give you the skills you need when you walk into the interview. A lot of people who interview for these jobs will ask you, tell me about the lab you have at home. And you get to say, well, I've got a VM machine set up here. I'm doing pfSense. I've got configured these particular servers. I've got a Linux server running here, and I'm doing this with it. They want to see what you're doing along those lines to get and understand your interest in the technology. And that can actually go pretty far, even if you don't have any practical experience.
Okay. Yeah, I could probably look into, because I have a friend that has a lot of networking equipment, so I could probably, if he comes over, I could probably just see like how it all works and everything.
There you go. Perfect example, and I think you should take advantage of that.
Well, I guess that's all the questions I have.
Good luck, Chris. I appreciate you calling. Good luck with that, and it sounds like you got the right path there. So best of luck with all of that. This caller, 337 area code, has been holding for a long time. Thanks so much for holding. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Steven.
Hey, Steven. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yes, sir. I actually, believe it or not, I just got familiar with your website last night and noticed that y'all are doing a study group today, and I was pretty interested after
Timing's
reviewing all
everything.
the stuff.
Great. Welcome.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I've been watching your video for a little while, and some of the questions that have already been answered, but there's a lot of things that I'm just getting familiar with. Just to kind of give you a background, I do have a business management degree from UL Lafayette, a bachelor's, and then I've been working with a company doing SCADA work, and it's kind of why I've been interested in getting into IT. A lot of the stuff they did, whether it was networking or just overall configuring computers. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Ignition. I've been doing a lot of work with that, and I was actually kind of wondering, as far as just experience-wise, if that would be related to any of the IT stuff that I could associate with either A+ cert when applying for a job. I mean, I don't have an A+ certification yet. I'm actually in the process of starting to do it, kind of trying to get an idea of where I can go. But as you said through the video that I've been watching, that there's a lot of avenues that you can go, but A+ certification is a great foundation. What would you recommend, or what is your suggestion as far as what I could put like on a resume, or kind of go from, as far as I know, just getting my A+ certification, but what kind of, I guess, jobs that I could apply for with the experience that I have with this company? And I guess, I don't know, like whenever you were talking about, it's good to have a degree. I know I don't have a degree in that field, but I do have a degree, a bachelor's degree, but also getting certification, I'm assuming.
I'm laughing.
Showing that I can actually work with the work.
I apologize. I'm laughing because I have a bachelor's degree in business management. So,
really? That
should give you some perspective
awesome,
as to the value of it's. I tell people I got a 4-year degree in business management that didn't actually should tell me how to manage anybody, but that's a completely different story for some other time. One of the interesting things you're in right now is, and I mentioned this earlier, that if you're in a hospital, you learn about things that are very specific to the hospital. If you're in transportation, you've got a number of IT systems that are very specific to transportation. And if you're in an engineering or power management or industrial world, you've got SCADA and all of the modeling tools and things like Ignition that you would use in that world that are very unique to SCADA. So, what you're learning there still has application, because in all of those roles, there's an overlap, especially with SCADA. There's a huge security component. There is networking component like crazy. There's operating system hooks into all of that. And it's the same operating systems and security and firewalls and network components that they're using in hospitals, that they're using in transportation companies, that they're using in insurance companies, that they're using in state, local, and federal government. So although I started in my first big corporate role was when working with mainframes. So I have a lot of skills in IBM mainframes and a lot of skills in middleware that would connect operating systems to mainframes that I use none of today. There's donut. That's a knowledge that's stuck in my brain that I don't use ever, that I will never use again. But it's there. If anybody ever wants to talk SNA and talk about EBCDIC to ASCII conversions and talk about configuring DCA gateways to talk to an IBM mainframe, I'm your guy. But nobody's going to do that. But that's okay, because learning about managing those gateways, learning about networking and how those components interoperated, learning about the network protocols that were going over those connections were skills that I was able to use throughout my career. And it worked out.
Right.
Ultimately, I think it did. According to Mrs. Professor Messer, it worked out okay. So you take all of the things that you're doing in this incredibly interesting environment. You may move into a financial role next, and none of the stuff you did with Ignition applies at all. But in the financial world, they've got other systems that are unique to finance. They've got the same switches, the same routers, the same firewalls. They've got all the same networking components that work exactly the same way with exactly the same protocols. They're just connecting to financial databases and third-party financial systems instead of power management systems, for example. So you'll still be able to use that, just in a different way. The idea you have and the path that you've laid out and what you want to do is spot on, though.
Okay, because what I'm looking at is, like, I guess I'm in the unique position where I had experience. I got laid off not too long ago, but I have about 5 years, 6 years experience with working with SCADA, and I started with GE iFix and then moved to Ignition. Nice. But as far as connecting either TCP or RTU over TCP, and then being able to just connect, because we were connecting with freewave radios or Sierra wireless cell modems. That's great. Stuff like that, and then being able to communicate with, which we use standard Modbus for a lot of our to identify end components, as far as either it's a DI tag, AI tag, et cetera. We were able to do a lot of that stuff, and I feel as though I had the experience, but I don't have the certification to back up that I know what I'm talking about.
Well, you don't have to have a ton of experience. What you've already said, if you sat down with any network hiring manager, they would be very interested in the things you just said. Even though they probably don't have one bit of Modbus connectivity in their entire organization, it doesn't matter, because you've worked with some of the technology that can apply back to the things that are already going there. One of the challenges you have is with that particular niche, if you aren't working with your local power company, there's not a lot of other places to go. You would have to uproot and go to another geography to get another job that was very specific to SCADA, because it is a very unique set of technologies for a particular part of the world, part of a need of a company. So, but a lot of what you already know applies very well to other technologies that are used with local elections companies, that are used with transportation companies, that are used with financial organizations, that are used with other or just corporations in your area. Don't limit yourself to just the skills that you've already worked on, because quite honestly, with IT, you'll end up going another direction without even realizing it, because that's just the path you happen to go down. I started with working with workstation management. I moved into networking, eventually moved into security, but I would have never predicted that. And I certainly didn't plan it. It just happened to work out that way. So keep a very broad scope and go talk to people who are hiring and tell them the stories about the things you've done, and they'll be able to figure out if that works for them or not.
Right. And I mean, I'm just, and that's the number one thing I'm having a problem with just investing the amount of time that it takes to get an A+ certification. I know, I mean, it can vary from person to person depending on how fast you learn the material. And I mean, I've been familiar with computers almost all my life since I was a little kid. I mean, I know I'm 32 right now, so I'm kind of having a perspective as far as, whenever the 3.5-inch floppy disks is, I remember working with that, but it's just a matter of doing the A+ certification, because I understand that it is a very specific niche as far as SCADA is concerned, but I do want to be myself. I want to make myself readily available in a broad spectrum, like you said. And I guess the question leading up to that is, getting this A+ certification, is it worth the time to do it to broaden my horizons as far as applying for other job positions that I would like to do.
I would not necessarily say so. For what you've already said here and the things that you've worked with and done, I think getting the A+ certification may be something that's not necessary. You've already kind of passed by all of the things. Do you know everything that's on the A+? No, because nobody does. You would have had to work with deep Windows and Linux and all of the things associated with it. Are there gaps? Yes. But the people who are hiring you for what you know are probably not looking for an A+ certification on your piece of paper anywhere. They're probably looking for a Network Plus certification or something that's higher than that. Or looking for something very specific that was very niche-y with the things that you were working with before, if you want to continue in that particular niche. So I wouldn't, if I was you, if I was in your position, I probably wouldn't focus on A+. I would probably focus more on layering on top of that a networking knowledge. And I kind of say this for a lot of people, and I think it still applies, is that networking is the glue that holds everything else together. So if you've got a good understanding of the network foundation, you can really apply that to databases, to servers, to workstations, to other networking components, to third-party connections, to security, to SCADA, to healthcare, it connects everything. And so I think that's a very good foundation to have, as a networking foundation. Maybe considering Network Plus or even the Cisco series of certifications, if that's a path you want to go down, might be a better use of your time. And ultimately find out what people are hiring. In your particular geography, hiring managers probably already know what they want. They're probably putting it on a resume. See what types of certifications they're looking for. And don't forget about, I mentioned this earlier, don't forget about your personal networking. Go to the Microsoft user group meetings, go to the Cisco user group meetings, and meet those people too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess the reason why I'm so gung-ho about trying to take the A+ cert is because I feel as though I know enough, but I don't know enough to where it would carry over to Network Plus. You see what I'm saying? I do. It's one of these things where, and I don't think there is much overlap between the two. If you jumped into Network Plus, I don't think you'd be missing anything by not having the A+ certification. But I also think a lot of people miss the point that certifications have, they use certifications as a tool. They use it as a hiring tool or a way to bypass an HR filter. They use it as a way to get a job, but they forget that the process of learning everything that's in that certification is actually a great educational experience. There are things that I learned when I got my Microsoft MCSE certification back in the day on Windows NT that I'm still using with Microsoft technologies today because I understood everything there was needed to know for NT to get my MCSE. But things don't change with operating systems. The concepts are similar. The way that memory is used, the way that disks are laid out, the way the structure is there, that it was then very easy for me to continue the education with other operating systems. So I get that. I get what you're saying. There's a great foundation that you can personally have for knowing the knowledge of what's on the A+, but I also don't think it's really much of a prerequisite for the Network Plus or even anything else going forward. Okay. And I guess, well, I had this question for as far as the A+ certification, like what type, because they have it to where people, whenever they say they're A+ or they're Network Plus certified, like what are the job specifications that you're looking for, like as far as whenever you say, look at what people are looking for when you're hiring someone, like how do you put that as like an actual job description?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to know what to look for unless you know what to look for, kind of thing, especially with job descriptions. So you can start with looking for help desk positions and seeing what they're asking for. I think your particular requirements are a little ahead of that. You might want to look at, obviously, the SCADA stuff is good to look for around the country and see what people are hiring for, but also look for network administration, network management, security administration, security management. There's very broad things that you could start searching for in those job descriptions, and just to see what they're looking for. Most of the time, they'll at least have some ranges in there for salary so that you can position yourself well, so that you can look at something like a help desk and say, oh, I can't do that job. Let's look for one that has a little bit higher requirements, but also has a higher amount of money that I can make in that particular role. And you'll figure out what those things are based on what's in those job descriptions. You're going to have to look at a lot. Job descriptions don't tell you everything, but they at least give you a broad perspective of what employers are wanting to see when you walk in the door.
Okay. And then I guess another question that I had was, like, as far as the format for the A+ and the Network Plus certification test, what is the actual format? Is it like multiple choice, or is it just is it scenario based, or how does that work?
It's a little combination of things. It has traditionally been multiple choice through the years. A few years ago, CompTIA added to the beginning that you're going to get a handful of what they call performance-based questions. So it will be anything but multiple choice. It might be that they put you into a command prompt and they tell you to perform a function. It might be a matching of pictures with what the pictures do. It might be putting things in a particular order, like we did in our first question today, where we had to put in order how you get rid of malware. And there's usually somewhere between 3 to 10 of those. They don't tell you exactly how many you will get, but you get a chunk of those at the beginning, and the rest of the exam is traditional multiple choice.
Okay. And then I guess for someone like me that has the experience, like you said, you're pretty confident as far as Network Plus. I mean, I'm not I guess my confidence whenever it comes to I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I don't know if networking is the thing that I want to do, or if it was security, or if it's just general computer technician work, or whatever the case may be. But it's just you would think that like a Network Plus certification would be the route to go as far as where I've been and the experience that I have.
I think it gives you that jumping off point to know where to go next. For me, that's what it did for me. I think it can do this for most people too, is that I got the networking knowledge, and then I realized from there, I could really go anywhere with this. I could branch it into databases. I could branch it into ISPs. I could branch it into telecommunications. I can go into security. I can go operating systems now and connecting operating systems into fault tolerant and work with the switches and the routers that we have. It really allowed me to go to a lot of different places. And it was that enabling for me that, okay, now I can really go a different direction. Where do I want to go? Whereas if I really focused on Microsoft certifications, I'm doing something relating to a Microsoft operating system, which may be what I was interested in. Or you're interested in, but I wasn't interested in that. I needed to know what I needed to do, and that gave me the options to go in a different direction. Ultimately, ended up with me being a systems engineer for a company that made protocol analyzers. So I got really down detailed into packets, and I became the packet guy. So that just happened to be my path, but at least I got the option to do that.
Okay, so you don't necessarily. So what you're saying is A+ certification is not necessarily the platform for everything. It could be Network Plus for me, and then kind of branch out. And if I want to, I could take an A+ cert, or I can take Security Plus, or wherever the case may be from there.
I often say that we probably should be starting with networking, but we end up starting with operating systems and go into network. I think networking is the center, and we just branch everything off of there.
Okay. All right. Well, you gave me a lot to think about. As far as like reading material, I've been looking at the website, and what would you suggest for like reading material and I guess stuff like that as far as studying? And because I plan on doing like I was planning on doing a lot of the training and videos from your website.
On my website, I recommend the GTS Learning books, but I always tell people that the book it's sort of like you picking your wand. It needs to be a good match for you. So I recommend people go to Amazon, find the most popular A+ books, and Amazon lets you read through, the first chapter or so of those books. Find the one that speaks to you the best, because I went through a number of different A+ books when I was going through my studies, and the first book I went all the way through, and it was okay. When I started the second book, it's the one that worked better for me. I probably should have started with that one. Had I gone back and read them all first, at least the first chapter, I would have probably chosen my second book as the one that I should have gone with to begin with. Everybody's got a different perspective. Some people love the GTS learning books. Some people don't like the GTS learning books. I think that's to be expected.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it so much. Another question. About how long does it take for someone? I have experience and all that, but some experience. About how long does it take for someone like me to really go through the Networking Plus program and kind of complete the course, take the test? I know it varies from person to person.
Oh, it varies widely from person to person. I've seen people go through it literally in a week, and I think they're probably a freak of nature. You know who I'm talking about, you. And then there's other people that, like me, that take months to go through these things because I am methodical. I want to understand every aspect of it. And I've got other stuff going around in my world. So it just takes a while. I don't have a lot of time every day to spend on it. So for me, those types of exams take 3 to 6 months. I would say on average, it's 3 months. Whether you're average or not is really going to depend on you.
Right. Okay. Well, man, I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for all your help and your time. It's been invaluable.
My pleasure. Best of luck, Stephen.
All right. Appreciate it.
That's a lot to encapsulate into a single call. There's a lot of good stuff there. I almost want to rewind it. I'll just play that on all the other study groups. Let's go to 773 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Thanks for holding. Oh, I may have lost them. They may be on mute. They may not be hearing me. They may not be picking up. You were on hold so long, I can only imagine. Probably lost interest. You've probably walked away from the phone if you're smart. I'm going to return you to the queue, and we're going to go to the 575 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes, sir.
Hey, what's your name?
Yes, my name is Ronald.
Hey, Ronald, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yes, sir. In your opinion, Mr. Messer or Professor Messer, what would be a bigger or better job marketability or availability, security or wireless?
Oh, that's...
Because I was thinking about going CCNA, CCNP, wireless, CCIE. I just wanted your opinion.
I think all of those are good. It's tough because I came out of networking and went into security, and it was a very successful transition to me. Security was plus I liked it. So it was not only from a career perspective the right move, financially for my family it was the right move, but then it was something I really enjoyed doing. Right. That's really different than wireless and dealing with those technologies. In fact, wireless is a little bit smaller of a niche, but it's still a pretty important one. And there's plenty of companies out there making wireless products that would love to have very knowledgeable systems engineers that are helping to sell and implement their wireless products. So I tell people in IT, there's always a job somewhere doing something with this particular niche. It really comes down to what interests you the most. And that's a difficult question because I know a lot of things interest me. I would love to do a live stream every week on IT news and things that are happening in the industry. I like getting into the news. I'm a news hound. I like getting into the details, the things that are going on right now with technology and now blending into politics and blending into finance is remarkable. We could spend hours talking about Cisco and Bitcoin, but I look at what I'm doing for, as my job, as my full time here. I just don't have time to do it. So sometimes you have to find the thing that makes sense financially and from your interest perspective, and that's the direction you go with it.
So in terms of in the future, what would you say would be still emerging in terms of security? I know you said wireless is a small niche, but my teacher said, voice is real popular. I go on Indeed, Monster, and it's, jobs for both, markets are there. So, I'm kind of like in the air.
I'm speaking in very relative terms. IT in the market is very big. There's tons of jobs out there. You can find a company that makes wireless product. They're hiring right now. We're in a good place from the economy perspective. So you've got a lot of options to do this. I think that you're right, because voice is very popular, but I think some of the things that are very popular right now, virtualization we sort of hit a peak with it, but it's still extremely popular for hiring and having people know virtualization. Security is continuing to grow. We are not even close to being tapped out on the security side, so that's huge. And right now, data, it's all about big data. It's all about the big databases. It's all about protecting the big databases. It's all about gathering the data and putting it into the big databases. There's a huge market there as well.
Okay, I think I'll go security, sir.
You can't. The good part, you can't go wrong. So whatever you do, and even if you get somewhere and you go wrong, you just adjust and go the other direction. It's a perfect place to be.
Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
Thanks, Ronald. That's one of the things that I started working on workstations and pivoted over to servers, and then pivoted over to networking, and then pivoted over to protocol analysis, and then pivoted over to IT management, and then pivoted back to protocol analysis, more on the marketing side, and then pivoted into security. What kind of path was that? That's crazy. Back to the phone calls. We're going to go try 773 again and see if they made it back to the phone. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
My name is Nasser.
Hey, Nasser. Thanks for calling. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed your programs entirely. Very, very interesting. Very, very lovely.
Glad to hear it. What can we do for you?
Yes, my question is, you mentioned somewhere that you could create a virtual lab on your computer. What is the steps to do that? And I like to do that because sometimes, you could do many things with it. And as you know, actually, right now, VMware is very popular. Most companies are using that.
Oh, yes.
So that would be one step that's creating getting into VMware, because most companies are doing that now,
It's so true. And one of the things I often recommend to people, especially as they're going through their A+ certification, is to put some virtual machines on their computer and start running things in a virtual machine, just so they can get accustomed to using a virtual environment, just as you mentioned. One place to go is modern.ie, modern.ie. That will redirect you to a Microsoft website that's a developer website. But on this website, they have a tools menu that has a list of virtual machines that you can run that are running Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. And you can download fully built virtual machines from Microsoft, load up the virtual machine. In fact, they give you instructions on how to do it. Once you pick the VM, they will even tell you can run this on VirtualBox, you can run it on Vagrant, you can run it on Hyper-V, you can run it on VMware, or you can run it on Parallels. So you've got there's plenty of research you're going to be doing at this point. But I tell people, get VirtualBox, download a virtual machine for VirtualBox, get it up and running on your desktop, and try out running Windows inside of Windows, and get people accustomed to doing that. And I think it's a great way to not only learn the things you need to learn for your A+ certification, but now you're also learning, how do I work with virtual machines? And what you end up doing is, if I can run this VM, let me download a Linux virtual machine. Let me install a virtual machine from scratch. And you start learning more and more about virtual technologies and how to work with them on the desktop, which then moves into working with virtual technologies on servers. And now you've got a whole career to go down.
Wonderful. And what was the name of the website? You said Modern. Sorry, can you please repeat that?
Sure. It's modern.ie, modern.ie, India Echo, IE. It stands for Internet Explorer, because it's Microsoft's website that they give you these VMs so you can test your Internet Explorer apps. But the terms of service also allow you to use it for any labs you're doing, as long as you aren't using it for production use.
Wonderful. I appreciate that very much. And Professor, are you going to go through any of the commands, for example, for Cisco? Are you going to touch anything on that subject? Because it's good to know that, especially coming up with IP version 6 and all that. And most companies they have to change to IP version 6. So are you going to going to have time to do anything like that? Or get into at least touch some of the subject, the highlights of the subject?
Well, you've certainly hit the real key is, am I going to have time to do it? I have an ICND1 course notes book that I sell. I have all the notes for taking that first Cisco exam, and I've effectively built out all of the presentations and labs that you would need to do this, with the intention that one day I am going to find time to record videos associated with that content. Right now, though, I'm focused on getting the next Security Plus completed. It's a new exam is coming out in October. I'm going to have videos and a whole course available for that. Maybe after that's done, I'll have time to do some Cisco, because I'd love to get some Cisco videos out there too.
Wonderful. So I send the book. Where can you purchase that book?
ProfessorMesser.com/ICND1.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I don't want to take too much of your time because I know there's many students who have different questions. So I'm going to make it short, and hopefully next live sessions I'll have some questions, but it will be brief because I know everybody wants to get in touch with you. Because
I look forward to your call, Nasser. Thanks so much for calling.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day. Thank you, sir.
You too. That's one thing that it's about time, isn't it? How much time can I spend doing these things? Right now, Security Plus is all-encompassing, it seems. Let's go to the 323 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello, Professor Messer. This is Albert.
Hey, Albert. What can we do for you?
I had a question.
All right.
I have a question. I've done some digging online, but I wanted to get your opinion. What is the difference between help desk and desktop support?
In some cases, very little. It seems that most help desks often deal with people's things that they're dealing with on their computer desktops. So that's one aspect of it. But there are, especially in larger organizations, people that are focusing on deployment and management of their desktop systems. So there's people that answer phones when problems happen, but there's an entirely different group of people that deploy new systems, that set up new parts of the business, that send out the laptops to everybody. Sometimes they're part of the help desk. Sometimes they're their own department completely, depending on how big the company is. Because if you ever look at Microsoft's Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10 configuring and deploying certifications, that's a huge set of topics to have to know. And you don't usually know that as someone who's working on a help desk. It's really more of a very specific job role where you're deploying and maintaining these desktop systems.
So those two terms can be used interchangeably?
In some organizations, it's the same group, but it's usually people who are answering the phone for problems or on the help desk, people who are deploying new systems and making sure that systems are up and running in their environment and keeping the antivirus installed and making sure that people have VPN access is sometimes a completely different group of people.
I see. Because I know they have different tiers within both of them, tier 1, 2, and 3. But I just wanted to find out exactly when I tried to look for a job as a entry-level technician, trying to get into the field, exactly which position should I try to hone in on, desktop or help desk?
I would bet in the vast majority of organizations, I would bet that they start people at the help desk. And if everything works out well and you learn the help desk, you become comfortable in the organization, that's when you would move into desktop support or move into server support or some other part of IT. I would think they would start you at the help desk, though.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you so much.
So welcome. Thanks for calling, Albert.
Have a great day.
You too. That's one where it also depends on the organization and their structure and how they're set up. And some organizations start you in desktop support without having to go through help desk. Just depends on the size of the organization and what their structure is. Let's go to the 408 area code. If I click the button right, are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hi, how's it going? My name's Cameron. I had a question similar to the last caller. Wanted to see kind of what your advice would be on somebody who is exiting a construction background and going into the A plus and whatnot, I've done some virtualization on my computer and partitioned everything and
nice.
Done some of that.
It's nice. So when you say working, you mean working in construction? You mean like putting up drywall, building houses, or do you mean working in IT for a construction organization?
Actually doing the physical building with the drywall and.
Perfect. So this is one where the A plus is a great place to start because you're getting the foundation of what you need to know to get that first job in another organization. And I think that the things you're doing already are exactly what you should be doing. Building your own systems, getting the VMs running, trying different operating systems, becoming familiar with those, and maybe even using them to perform a particular task or even set up a web server or set up your own firewall or anything that you can do in your own lab. The other thing that I'll mention to you especially, and I mentioned this for the folks that were calling, because I always say it's best if you have a formal education, if you have some certifications, if you have some practical experience, and if you know people. So I've added that know people as your fourth one in that list. So if you're coming from a different market, if you've been doing a different kind of job, because people talk to me all the time where they were driving a semi, or they were working as a nurse, or they were doing some other completely different non-technology job role, and they want to transition into IT, you've got some advantages, and you may be able to even use these advantages yourself, because there are people, there's a huge IT organization at Home Depot, at Lowe's. There's a huge IT organization at some of these very large builders. So you may be able to take knowledge you have about things you've already done professionally and apply them into technology that people who are already in IT don't have that perspective. And you may be able to take advantage of that. You may not, but it's still something you might be able to use. The other thing is to use every single one of those four things I mentioned. If you don't have a formal degree in IT, now's the time to start meeting people in IT. So make sure you take advantage of your local user groups. They don't care that you used to be a nurse or work in construction or drive a semi. All they care about is what do you know about this technology and can you help our organization? And it helps if you know somebody, because they can go past the fact that you perhaps don't have some of these other aspects of knowledge and really focus on the things you do know and get you in a job that makes sense with you. So just because you're moving from one type of job to another, you may want to compensate that with some of those other pieces that I mentioned.
Very good. Well, I got the 3 out of those 4.
That's great.
Thank you so much for everything you do and all the information that you help all of us out with. So have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. Best of luck. It's one of those things where use as much of that as you can. And I even think it's knowing someone. I mentioned this before, that I've had at least 15 jobs in IT, and I knew somebody at every job except the first one. It's knowing somebody. It makes such a difference. Whether it's even somebody who's the direct hiring, maybe you know somebody who just works at the company. Knowing somebody who's there also helps as well. And if you know somebody who works at that company, I'll also tell you that almost every company out there has an employee referral program. And if they know you, they can put your name in with HR. And that way, if you get hired, they also get some money. So there's also often a motivation for bringing you in and getting you this job. So another great example of where you can go to try to figure out some of those things. Folks in the chat room are like, where do I find these user groups? You search for Microsoft user group, Cisco user group. Often meetup.com will have a list of those in your area, but not always. Look to see what's in your geography. That's an opportunity for all of those things and being able to work through those pieces. Well, that brings us, gosh, we've gone 3 hours today, it seems. We've gone, 2 hours. We've gone to 3, haven't we? We've gone to 12, 1, 2. We're now in hour 3. So that's quite a distance of that my throat has been able to go, I can tell. So I think that's a perfect opportunity to end the study group right there. I think I'm going to have to do it anyway because I can't talk anymore. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much for 200,000 subscriptions on YouTube. What a banner day that was. Thanks for your participation in the Q&A. Thanks for your phone calls today. We love it when you're able to be here and talk with us directly. We've got our next week at 12 noon, same time on Wednesday. We've got our Network Plus study group. We'd love to have you there for that, or see you next month for the next A Plus study group as well. Either way, I want to thank you for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the A Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.